Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
As Australia grieves, authorities reveal the gunmen in the Bondi Beach attack were inspired by Islamic State.
No, it's not. I'm live in Sydney, where leaders have promised to tighten gun laws in the wake of the tragedy. We'll have all the latest.
Also today, Donald Trump demands the BBC pays billions of dollars as he files his lawsuit for defamation.
And have you ever wondered just how many satellites Elon Musk's Starlink has put into the sky?
Well, we'll tell you the answer and why their internet services are being used in ways you might not expect. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. Well, authorities in Australia have begun to release details about the two gunmen as the nation grieves the deadliest attack in nearly 3 decades. Police have said that the father and son shooters were inspired by Islamic State and found IS flags and explosive devices in their car.
So they're also investigating exactly why the two men made a trip to the Philippines last month. So lots of things moving today. We can bring in Jonathan Samuels, who's live in Sydney for us today. Jonathan, lots of moving parts. What's the update you can bring to us?
Morning, Sophie. Morning, Wilf. Well, I'm standing very close to where the massacre took place on Sunday evening, and I have to say that hundreds and hundreds of people have passed through here today, many bringing flowers, all coming to pay their respects. Some have come alone, some have come in groups. A short time ago, Bondi United football team were here. Young lads, all dressed in their football kit, all came and silently stood next to this huge pile of flowers, reading the messages and just pausing to show their unity with the Jewish community. Also, rabbis have been here, plus Jewish leaders making spontaneous speeches and also leading prayers. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has called for unity, but some in the Jewish community say that the government has not done enough to protect people, as our correspondent Cordelia Lynch now reports.
Amidst the grief comes the slow drip of revelations. The Australian Prime Minister confirming the alleged gunmen who carried out the deadly massacre here on Bondi Beach appeared to be motivated by Islamic State ideology. For a Jewish community that feels deeply exposed, he tried to offer words of reassurance.
My message to Jewish Australians is that we stand with you as a nation. We embrace you at what is a terrible time. These anti-Semitic terrorist attacks will not be successful with their objective, which is to divide us as a nation.
But at the Central Synagogue in Sydney, those words ring hollow for Daniel Lukowitz.
He's done nothing for 2 years as the country became increasingly divided into the Jewish community and large groups that were vilifying the Jewish community.
Do you hold him responsible for this attack?
He has Jewish blood on his hands, and not for anything specific that he has done, but specifically for things that he has not done. Since October the 9th, which was less than 48 hours since the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, there was a riot at the Sydney Opera House, and people there calling in English and Arabic for violence toward Jews.
He did, though, the Prime Minister, condemn those protests.
The condemnation was largely absent or meek at best, and it wasn't relentless, and it clearly had no impact because we even had Australian politicians turning up to these protests.
The authorities are now investigating the days leading up to Australia's worst massacre in 3 decades. The police revealing the alleged attackers recently visited the Philippines, a country that's long dealt with Islamic militants in parts of the south.
I can confirm that they did travel to the Philippines. The reasons why they went to the Philippines and the purpose of that and where they went when they were there is under investigation at the moment. I also confirm that the vehicle, which is registered to the younger male, contained IEDs, but I also confirm that it contained 2 homemade ISIS flags.
Whether Australia's government has done enough to tackle anti-Semitism is now under intense scrutiny. Whatever the rights or wrongs, at the core of this tragedy is a group of people that no longer feel safe in the country they call home. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Sydney.
And Cordelia is here with me now. Cordelia, you touched on this in your report there, but the Prime Minister, this government, really under a lot of pressure now that they ignored warnings, plenty of warnings, in the run-up to Sunday. What's being said?
I think the contention amongst many people here is that there have been significant anti-Semitic attacks in Australia, both here in Sydney and in Melbourne as well. Synagogues and businesses targeted, and the communities there feeling deeply uneasy about their safety, their security. Now, there have been efforts by the Australian government to try and tackle this, to try and curb anti-Semitism. 6 months ago, there are a number of policies and plans, procedures put in place to try and counter this. The question being asked, have they delivered on any of this? Because there has been a sense here that something impending, something awful was coming. I think still it's taken people by shock, the scale of this particular attack and the fact that these 2 gunmen were able to open fire indiscriminately on such a popular and public tourist location. But Anthony Albanese maintains that he is doing all he can, that this attack will not divide the people. But look, people here need more reassurance than they currently feel like they're getting.
And you mentioned the 2 gunmen. We are learning more and more about them because there is criticism there as well that they somehow slipped under the radar.
That's right. We are hearing from police and security sources inside the Philippines today about this visit to the Philippines that took place just in the weeks preceding this attack. Now, Sajid and Naveed, a father and son, entered into the Philippines, and it was said that their final destination, or at least the point they were trying to reach, was Davao City in Mindanao. Now, Mindanao is important because that is a place that's being connected with Islamic extremism, terrorism. Now, we don't know what they did while they were there, but there are reports that they may have been trying to take part in some kind of military training. That has not been confirmed by our sources yet, but clearly the southern part of the Philippines is a place where they have had an issue with extremism and with conflict there too. So the authorities here, and they're now probing what more they might be able to find out about these gunmen.
Yeah, all part of the mammoth investigation currently underway. Cordelia, thank you very much for the moment. Well, this attack was the country's deadliest in nearly 3 decades, and through the hardship, some of the very best of humanity has been on display here. But it's one quick decision by one man that has really captured the world's attention. Ahmed al-Ahmed bravely snatched the weapon from one of the terrorists and was shot multiple times. He's been hailed the hero of Bondi Beach, and around £750,000 has now been raised for him as he recovers in hospital, still undergoing operation.
Very strong. Thank you very much. Your heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Well, the Australian Prime Minister has visited the 43-year-old shop owner. Anthony Albanese says he represents the very best of Australia. Events have been held across the UK to remember the victims of the Sydney shooting, and it comes just 2 months after an attack at a synagogue in Manchester. The Jewish community here questions their safety amidst the grief.
In this Festival of Light, when we're supposed to be celebrating, it just feels that we're in a situation that's just dark, and it's terribly sad.
You have no choice but to carry on. What else are you going to do? Sit at home and be scared? Fear doesn't help.
Well, it's been very cloudy all day here in Bondi. Bondi Beach has been pretty much empty. No beach parties, no laughter, no one swimming in the sea. Instead, all we've seen today are a few locals, a few visitors walking the stretch of the beach and contemplating the horrors of what happened on Sunday. And they're also thinking about those three big issues which are now facing not only the government but Australian society here. Gun laws, are they strict enough? Also, anti-Semitism, was it on the rise hugely in the run-up to this, and did that mean warnings were missed? And finally, what of the two men responsible? What did the police know? What did the authorities know about them? That's all for the moment from here in Bondi. Back to you, Wilfred and Sophie.
Jonathan, thanks so much. Great to see you, and we look forward to ongoing coverage from Jonathan and the team coming up at 1:30. We want to get you to some breaking news here, though. Unemployment figures have just been released for the month of October. Gurpreet's here to break it down for us. What jumps out for you, Gurpreet?
Yeah, so the headline rate of unemployment has risen to 5.1% in October. Just to put that in a bit of context, that's the highest unemployment rate now we've had since early 2021. So deep, dark days of the pandemic, of the lockdowns. And to give you a sense of what's kind of happened over the past year, when we talk about a 5.1% unemployment rate, in the year to November, about 171,000 staff roles have disappeared from payrolls. 171,000 people. Now, that's a mixture of people retiring and not being replaced. It might be people who have actually been sacked. It might be employers just not kind of pulling up the ladder on graduate recruitment. But 171,000, 38,000 on the month alone. So this is quite significant, and all of which is to say it's a lot more competitive out there to get a job. So not only are there more people now looking for work, but vacancies, if we look back to kind of 2022, they've been pretty much consistently shrinking quarter on quarter. We've had a bit of let up here and there. Most recently, the figures show us that vacancies were flat, but they're still lower than they were back in 2022. And the best way to really think about that is to look at the ratio of unemployed person to job. Now, there are 2.5 unemployed people for every job that's out there. This time last year, we were talking about 1.8. And I think it's just worth saying that all of this is really hurting young people the most because it's entry-level work. If you look at those vacancies, it's at the entry level that they're really shrinking. There's a lot going on there. We know things like retail, hospitality, which have been really hit hard by employment taxes, by NICS increases. They have been shrinking, and they're the ones that give opportunities to young people often. Also have graduate jobs. There's a lot going on structurally in the employment market with AI. Maybe NICS has encouraged some businesses to accelerate investment in AI because now employment is so expensive. But there's loads going on here. And this is before we even get to talk about all the people that aren't even showing up in the employment figures because they're not even looking for work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to summarise that, the first line of the ONS statement, Gurpreet, says the overall picture continues to be one of a weakening labour market, and the statement goes on to say the fall in payroll and the increase in unemployment has been seen particularly among some younger age groups. So completely agree with that summary. Tell us about some of the people you've been speaking to on the front line. Yeah, I mean, it's just worth saying on that youth unemployment is actually rising among the fastest pace in the G7, just to point that out. So that's a big story here. Yeah, so I talked about the people who aren't even looking for work. There are millions of people who don't even show up in these figures because they're inactive. They're what we call economically inactive. Many of them too sick to work, or say they're too sick to work. And there are a group of people who are really troubling policymakers here in Westminster. They're scratching their heads, trying to figure out how to get them into work because it's getting more and more expensive to keep them on benefits. We're talking about maybe 100 billion it's going to cost in sickness and disability benefits by the end of the Parliament. And I wanted to understand what's keeping these people out of work. Because here we talk about carrot, we talk about stick, we talk about, is the benefit system too generous? Are people genuinely suffering from mental health crises? Is it waiting lists that are the problem? And so I spent some time with a programme called Jobs Plus, and they work in communities that are suffering from high levels of worklessness. And I wanted to ask them exactly what the barriers are that people are facing. And I want to show you a little clip from the piece that I did. The full report is online. But this is Sally, who's working on the Bidston Rise housing estate in Birkenhead. Have a listen to what she had to say. How many people would you say that you've worked with are dealing with debt?
I'd say about half the people that we're working with have been facing some sort of debt. Some of that is bills that they've not been able to pay. We've had one person that we supported who their data caused them to be cut off for their internet and their telephone, which meant that they couldn't do things like get online to do job search, get in touch with us even.
So my conclusions from this report is that it's just really complicated. There's so much going on. There's not one easy answer to all of this. But as I said, have a look online, check out the full report if you're interested.
Gabriel, great stuff. Thanks again. As the headline being there that the unemployment rate ticked up again to 5.1% for October. Now, Donald Trump is suing the BBC for, wait for it, $10 billion. It's like a scene out of, what was that Mike Myers movie called again? Austin Powers. $10 billion, sorry. In a defamation lawsuit filed overnight accusing the corporation of putting terrible words in my mouth.
Now, this is all over this Panorama documentary that edited one of his speeches to make it seem like he'd encouraged the Capitol Hill riot in 2021. Well, Oliver is here with us to go through the details. $10 billion.
See, you're doing the Austin Powers as well there.
Am I? I thought I was just saying $10 billion.
Yes, $10 billion, all in this 33-page court filing that Donald Trump's lawyers have put to a court in Florida. $5 billion for defamation, which Donald Trump says was done by the BBC with intent. It was done with malice, something that has damaged his brand value. And then another $5 billion for going against Florida's Unfair Trading Act. Now, this all relates to this documentary that was made by Panorama, in which the BBC spliced two different parts of Donald Trump's speech on January 6th, just before the insurrection, the riot on Capitol Hill, and made it look like he'd said something which he hadn't necessarily done. Now, the BBC last month has apologised for this, but there is a big question here about where the jurisdiction should be. Should he be bringing this case in the UK because BBC is British, or should it be happening in America? Donald Trump says he can bring this over in America because people could have watched it on the streaming service BritBox, or because people could have been using VPNs. And so he says people using these virtual private networks in Florida could have cheated where they were watching it from and made it look like they were watching it from the UK, and that thousands of Floridians were doing that.
I mean, I think still, even though he's filing it there, where there's a 2-year statute of limitations, so it still falls under that time horizon, I don't think anyone expects it to be 10 billion, whether it's even going to be properly heard and is successful or not. But there is form he has here on suing for massive amounts and essentially pressurising media entities that have to still exist in America. And even if this was a Panorama report and BBC in the UK, BBC America has a significant footprint, and pressuring them to settle for something.
Yeah, he's a litigious man. We know that, be that in the world of business or in the world of media. Other American publishers have settled previously, but the BBC says its position remains unchanged. It doesn't believe that there is a case to answer here. But what is really quite interesting is when you go through these, on page 25 of this filing, you see that he talks about this inherent institutional bias that the BBC has against him. And then he invokes the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, in which he says, now, no less an authority than the United Kingdom's former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, discussed this bias, the need to hold the BBC accountable and the BBC's pattern of actual malice. He then continues, remarked Truss, the BBC is a huge problem. They've lied, they've cheated, they've fiddled with footage, especially in the case of President Trump.
There you go. No less an authority than Liz Truss. Oliver, thank you very much indeed, Oliver, speaking to us there. Now, the government's held firm when it comes to money for resident doctors, and as a result, they're going to be walking out from tomorrow in another strike that is going to have a huge impact on the NHS and flu season. But they have found a bit of extra money for dentists to try and persuade more of them to see patients who are desperately in need of treatment on the NHS. So less teeth whitening, more root canal surgery. We can talk now to the Health Minister, Stephen Kinnock, who is at a dentist surgery in West London. So at the minute, it's really, really hard to find an NHS dentist. I guess the question is, will this make it easier?
Well, good morning, and yes, hello from Imperial College Dental Surgery here in London. Look, when we came into office in July 2024, we inherited an NHS dentistry system on its knees. Step by step, we are looking to fix it. One of the problems we identified is that, you know, every dentist is an independent business. They have an NHS contract. That contract was not incentivising urgent and complex work. So we're looking to fix that with this announcement today, which is going to embed urgent work in the NHS dentistry contract and is going to significantly increase the amount of money that is paid for urgent work. You currently get about £42 for a piece of urgent work as a dentist. We are lifting that to £75. And we're also dealing with the issue about complex work, where dentists are not incentivized to really work with people and who've got a number of issues with their oral health. We are bringing in a package that will either be £250 or £700 as, if you like, a kind of upfront payment to de-risk that work that the NHS dentist should be doing, and to help those people who've got a number of urgent and complex issues with their oral health. So it's about fixing this one step at a time, but we are prioritising urgent and complex work.
So you're basically giving dentists more money to do the work that really needs to be done. I guess if we're being really honest about this, you know, dentists are always going to make more money by taking on private work, like teeth whitening or whatever it is, right, rather than treating NHS patients, no matter how serious the condition. Would you urge dentists to, I guess, you know, take on more cases based on need rather than money? In other words, do they need to do their bit too? What would you say to NHS dentists,
I would absolutely urge them to do that, and I think there are a lot of dentists out there that are very committed to public service and want to help with NHS dentistry, but they also need to put bread on the table, and they've got to ensure that we've got to ensure that they are incentivised to do that. This is about re-engineering the contract, overhauling the contract to make sure that it works. But we're also doing things like, for example, we're saying, look, it costs the taxpayer £200,000 to train a dentist. Some dentists are graduating and then just going straight into doing 100% of their work on the private side of dentistry. We don't think that's right, so we're going to have tie-ins where we're going to ensure that for a period of probably around 3 years after graduation, every dentist graduating must do a proportion of their work on the NHS. We're also offering £20,000 golden hello schemes for people to go to underserved areas of the country, so-called dental deserts. So we're taking action step by step, but a radical overhaul of the contract is still required, and we're working with the British Dental Association to negotiate that now as we speak.
So for the dentists, they get golden hellos, they get a pay rise, and you've kind of held firm on the resident doctors in contrast, and now this strike action is going to go ahead. What would you say to the junior doctors?
Well, one thing I'd say on dentistry, there isn't actually new money for this. We're reprioritising budgets, changing from some unnecessary routine care that's happening to prioritise urgent care. But on the issue of the resident doctors, look, their action is irresponsible, it's reckless, and it's dangerous. We've offered them, given them a 28.9% pay rise. They are asking for 26% on top of that. That's just not living in the real world. They also have asked, and we have a lot of sympathy for this, you know, the previous government made some huge mistakes about the way they opened up to international doctors, making it much more difficult for British trained doctors. We look to fix that emergency legislation. We've also said they should delay these strikes till January. They seem to be hell-bent on doing maximum damage to our NHS, and that is completely unacceptable.
I just want to talk about the unemployment rate, because we've had, frankly, some really concerning figures come through this morning on the number of jobs in the UK. There's more people who want a job than there are jobs for them to get. So the unemployment rate was 4.1% when Labour came to power. It is now 5.1%. Do you accept that unemployment has got worse under Labour?
Well, we've also created hundreds of thousands of new jobs in our country. We've had the highest growth rate.
Sorry, I'm going to come in because you're talking about growth rates. You're talking about growth rates. I'm asking you, do you accept unemployment has got worse under Labour? I've just read out the statistics that show it has. So do you accept that?
Well, the way to create more jobs is to create growth, and that is what this government is completely focused on doing. That's why we've had billions of pounds of additional investment.
It's a really simple question. Do you accept unemployment's got worse under Labour? It has.
I would say that we are creating more jobs in our country. We are doing more in terms of an industrial strategy to get our economy back up and running after 14 years of neglect and incompetence. We've been hit by a completely botched
The unemployment rate was 4.1% when you came into power. It was 4.1% when you came into power. So you can't blame the inheritance when the unemployment rate was better than it is now.
Well, look, we're absolutely focused on getting more jobs, getting better paid jobs. We've also seen the minimum wage increasing substantially, so we're dealing with that cost of living crisis.
Wage growth is also
Of course, we want more jobs in our economy, but we want them to be well-paid jobs where people are really able to move on in life, get up that ladder, and that is what this Labour government is about. It's also really about ensuring people get a hand up rather than a hand out. So we're dealing with the issue of too many people being economically inactive, which is a terrible situation that we inherited from our predecessors. Under the previous government, welfare went up by £88 billion. So that's a huge issue that we need to fix. And I think by fixing that, getting people back into work who should not be getting written off, but who should actually be in work, because that's the best thing for their health and well-being, we will start to both get the economy growing again, deal with that unemployment challenge that you've raised, and ensure that we're getting people not just into any old job, but into jobs that are well paid and are rewarding and are moving them forward in life.
Just finally, Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion. Does the UK government need to raise this with Donald Trump to defend the BBC?
Well, it's absolutely right that the BBC is an independent organisation. I think they have apologised for one or two of the mistakes that were made in that Panorama programme, but they've also been very clear that there is no case to answer in terms of Mr. Trump's accusations on the broader point about libel or defamation. So, I think it's right that the BBC stands firm on that point. Yes, there were some mistakes made in that particular piece of film, but I think the broader argument that they were making, they're right to stick by their guns on that, and I hope that they will continue to do so as an independent organisation. Of course, funded by the licence fee, a hugely important institution. I am a massive supporter. The government is a massive supporter of the BBC. The Labour Party will always stand up for the BBC as a vitally important institution in both our political life and, of course, in terms of entertaining and informing the British public.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you, Stephen Kinnock, there at Dental Surgery.
We've got lots more to come on the programme. Up next, we're going to be talking about Rob Reiner's passing, and the latest developments on that. We'll be speaking to someone in Los Angeles.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
A very good morning and a very good evening from Bondi here in Sydney. You're watching Sky News. Now, the Jewish community around the world is grieving as 25 people remain in hospital, with 6 in a critical condition following the shooting at Bondi here in Sydney. The Australian Prime Minister sent a direct message to Jewish Australians during a news conference earlier, saying anti-Semitic terrorist attacks will not be successful with their objective, which is to divide the nation. Authorities say the father and son behind the shooting were inspired by Islamic State. Executive Manager at Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council, Joel Burney, joins me now. Joel, thank you for your patience. There's a speech going on here, but perhaps you can tell us 48 hours on how the community in Australia is coping.
Is here to support. Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's been a very tough time for the community over the past couple of days, and actually over the past 2 years. We've had a horrible tidal wave of anti-Semitic attacks against Jews over the past 2 years since the massacre of October 7. that actually started in the hours after the massacre itself, and it's just escalated from there. We've been targeted, vandalized, our homes have been targeted, our synagogues have been firebombed. And for 2 full years, me and the organised Jewish community and many others have been warning the government directly, indirectly, via the media, that if they continue on their way and they do not stop the hateful rhetoric on the streets of Melbourne and Sydney and other places around Australia, that hateful language was always going to cause blood to be spilled. They didn't listen to us, and they didn't believe us, and now we have the result of 15 innocent people. The Prime Minister today in his press conference was talking about division, and that was the motivation of the terrorists, so we shouldn't let them win. That's not right. The intention of the terrorists was to kill Jews. It wasn't to cause division inside Australia. It wasn't to get Jewish people to attack the Prime Minister for not keeping them safe. It was simply to kill and murder Jews. So the Prime Minister, unfortunately, still doesn't get it. And unfortunately, they're still not listening to us. For those who were cut down right here.
Well, of course, the Prime Minister would say
48 hours
that he
ago.
ordered a review into anti-Semitism. There's an anti-Semitism
We bless their souls.
envoy who has
We know that they
a
died
wide-ranging report with
bringing
new
light to our world, each and
yes,
every
that
one
is
of
on
them.
the desk of the Prime Minister. And
They
needs
will
to
be in
implemented.
our thoughts
But it is
and in the
something that was
collective
done.
hearts of the whole of Australia forever. This is the critical point. The explosion of anti-Semitism was so acute that there were things that the government tried to do. No one is saying that they didn't try, but everyone is saying that not only did they not get it right, but whatever they did wasn't enough. The Prime Minister over the past 72 hours has been more defensive of his government's policies and decides to go in front of television and list all the amazing things that he's done. All those amazing things that they did not stop the innocent killing of 15 people. They did not listen to the community when the community told them, you cannot allow the hateful pro-Palestinian marches in the streets of Melbourne and Sydney to continue the way that they were going. That you could not allow for downtown Melbourne and Sydney to no longer be safe spaces for Jews. You could no longer allow for perpetrators of synagogue burnings and other violent acts to go free after being arrested, to be released on bail before they are convicted, or once while they're convicted find that there was no anti-Semitic intent, they were just doing it because the Iranians ordered them to do it, so nothing to see here. So regardless of what the Prime Minister thinks he has done, list them all, it simply has not been enough.
We will say their Joel Burney, thank you very much. Prayers are being said here in Bondi, so we're going to leave things there, and I'll hand back to Wilf and Sophie. Plenty more coverage from Sydney throughout the morning.
That we will
Jonathan, thank you very much. We'll go back to Jonathan, of course, throughout the morning for more information, more coverage of the tragedy on Bondi Beach.
Now, we've had some more information on the death of the film director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, who were stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home. Their son has been arrested on suspicion of murdering his parents.
And Donald Trump has also been heavily criticised for his extraordinary attack on Rob Reiner. He described him as tortured and struggling with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. I should say that both of the men had a bit of a difficult relationship. I think it's fair to say Rob Reiner, a critic of Donald Trump before his death.
Here is Martha Kellner's report, which does contain flash photography.
Rob and Michelle Reiner's home is dressed for Christmas. Wreaths on the gate and giant baubles on the tree. No hint of the horror that unfolded inside here. Reiner, one of Hollywood's most acclaimed film directors, and photographer wife Michelle found stabbed to death. The man arrested for murder is their son Nick, pictured here between the couple. And in the back of this family photo, aged 32, he'd struggled with drug addiction and mental health issues.
I have a famous dad and a famous grandpa, and they sort of, that fame sort of informs who you are. So I wanted to etch out my own identity with a more rebellious, angry, drug-addicted sort of persona.
The night before the couple's death, Nick had attended a Christmas party with them, thrown by talk show host Conan O'Brien. Other guests said Nick's behaviour was erratic and worrying.
We have our robbery homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder.
What are you doing?
Reiner acted in sitcoms and films, but was best known as a director.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The vision behind iconic hits like A Few Good Men
Just have an early meeting.
and When Harry Met Sally. Reiner was a Democratic Party activist and vocal critic of President Donald Trump. In response to Reiner's death, Trump posted this on social media. He said Reiner had died because of the anger he caused others and that he had a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS, adding that Reiner had a raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump.
Even in the current administration, where normal codes of conduct and standards of decency that you'd expect from a president no longer apply, there is discussed here that the nightmare that unfolded in this House could be exploited to make political statements.
Leave it to our president. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. I'm not surprised. It's disgusting, though.
Donald Trump is not a human being. He doesn't have any blood in his veins.
Republicans are also condemning Trump's statement. Former ally Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that this is a family tragedy, not politics, and should be met with empathy. The Reiner's murder has been described as a Greek tragedy. A man who brought such joy with his art, whose movies will live on. His own life ended in the cruelest way imaginable. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Let's talk about this more now with Richard Winton, a crime and investigative writer at the LA Times. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for staying up late for us. What is, first of all, the latest? Reiner's son has been arrested but not yet charged?
Yeah, he has been arrested. He's probably going to be charged on Wednesday morning in Los Angeles time. He's basically, they found him about 15 miles from the home in south Los Angeles near the big sports stadium in the city called the Los Angeles Coliseum. It was a considerable team of U.S. Marshals and gang detectives located him and took him into custody about 9 o'clock in the evening. Basically, what we know right now is essentially that his sister, Romy, found her parents after going to the home about 3:30 on Sunday. We do not know how long they were dead at this point. There's a time gap, obviously, between what you heard at the party, which happened on Saturday night at Conan O'Brien's house. We understand in that party, Nick had some altercations and sort of falling out with some guests at the party, and then Rob interceded at some point, and there was an argument, and they went home, and we do not know what happened after that.
What more can you tell us, both from what you've learned specifically about that party, but I guess the relationship that the father and son had, and how it had gone through highs and lows over many years?
Well, what we know at that party is he was acting straight. We talked to friends of theirs who were present at the party. There were a lot of Hollywood celebrities and people who run the sort of business in Hollywood at that party. And essentially, what we've heard is that his behavior was quite strange, was off, it was noticeable, and it led to some sort of altercation where Rob basically stepped in and then they left. And what we've also found, obviously, there's quite a bit of public history with them. He's been of a movie with his father on this subject.
Yeah, and what about the president's reaction? I mean, with a story that's this shocking, it's amazing that most of the coverage today is not about the details of a son being arrested for potentially being charged with murder of his parents, but the president's reaction.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of off to the side here in Los Angeles because obviously a lot of people are more concentrated on the tragedy. But yeah, obviously the comments were kind of shocking and surprising, and greeted kind of across the aisle with the same sort of response. So, it's part of what's going on here. But, obviously here in Los Angeles, we're dealing with like a real tragedy. Two people much beloved, regardless of politics, kind of they're gone. And the mystery is how and what happened.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us and for staying up late. Richard Winton from the LA Times.
Coming up, we're talking about the space race, how Elon Musk's project could be delivering broadband and internet to different areas in rural parts of the country. It's quite interesting.
We'll be right back with that.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water, and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagir, Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking.
Thank you so much.
Trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Bagir has this report.
And this is what's left of it. As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Elon Musk's success in space has been achieved with extraordinary speed. His company Starlink has sent more satellites into orbit than everybody else combined. But our data and forensics team has found 21% of Starlink activity occurs in unlicensed countries.
Now, that includes Sudan, where the militant rapid support forces use the network that Elon Musk has created in their ongoing civil war. So lots of questions about this. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has more.
It is a sleek, glossy vision. High-speed internet, more luxury than utility. Starlink, which is owned by SpaceX, uses receivers like this to deliver internet anywhere, no matter how remote. And it's enabled the world's richest man to dominate space too. But anyone being able to get internet anywhere means exactly that. Anyone, including people in places who you might prefer not have access at all. This is Sudan. Members of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, who have been accused of massacring civilians and other war crimes, have fitted Starlink terminals to their vehicles. An analysis by Sky's Data and Forensics Unit shows that 21% of global Starlink traffic originates from unauthorized locations like Sudan.
The fact that you're seeing increasingly RSF fighters advertise it on platforms like Facebook, platforms like TikTok, that's meant to essentially be part of the narrative warfare, displaying or showing off that they have more advanced electronic capabilities.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
There is a global race to control space.
SpaceX, go Starlink.
That involves nation-states and superpowers. But one man is winning, Elon Musk through his company SpaceX. It's these rockets that he uses to deliver Starlinks into low Earth orbit, LEO, an orbit relatively close to Earth used by most satellites. Starlink has come to dominate LEO since it launched its first 60 satellites here in green in May 2019. 2 years later, that was up to 1,663 satellites, more than had been launched in the entire Cold War by the US and Soviet Union combined. By December 2025, the majority of all satellites in space were part of Starlink. This is the Sky News engineering department, where we work with a lot of technologies, and that's what Starlink fundamentally is, a neutral piece of technology, a useful one, because rather than a big satellite dish like this on the back of a truck, these are being phased out, you get a Starlink terminal on the front. And if that's not portable enough, well, you can grab one of these, shove it in a backpack, and have internet anywhere you go. Now, Starlink knows the location of all these terminals, and it can turn them on and off. But they're so portable, the technology is so fast-moving that norms, laws, regulations are perhaps not keeping pace.
Starlink is an exemplar of a growing tension point and problem of governance on a global scale. So technological reality and changes within technologies are rapidly increasing. Rule of law, however, is inching along at a snail's pace. And what this leads to then is an ever-widening gulf between technological realities and rule of law.
This shows all the countries where Starlink officially operates. Sudan is not on that list. But even if bad actors do get their hands on Starlink, it has provided lifelines to many, many others, especially in disaster zones. Alison Thompson is an aid worker who spent weeks in Jamaica after the devastating Hurricane Melissa ripped through the island. She says it has revolutionised aid.
We get down 15 minutes, find the police station, the school, the clinic. If that's wiped out, someone responsible. We have someone that sets the Starlink and can be responsible for that. And then we quickly assess the area. What's the population? What are the needs? Then we jump back up in the helicopter. Next village, next village. We try to hit at least 20 villages a day. That opens up that whole community to all the aid that they need.
Starlink didn't immediately respond to requests for comment, but they have previously said, on the rare occasions we identify a violation, we take appropriate action, including working with law enforcement agencies around the world.
Falcon 9 is traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Its vast constellation represents tremendous power in space, for good and potentially for bad.
Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, founder of SpaceX, founder of XAI.
And all that power rests with one man, and the decisions that he can make alone.
Tom's here with us. Awesome report on this, Tom. And I mean, I guess there's so many things to it. The bit that kind of jumps out to me in terms of where it's being used versus where it's not. I mean, the country that really stands out is Ukraine, who, if not for Starlink, it's certainly in the early part of the war, would have had almost zero connectivity, and it was transformational that coverage was given to them.
Yeah, and Ukraine's a great example because it shows some of the dangers of this control with one man. You know, when they had that big counter-offensive and suddenly the Starlinks weren't working in a certain part of the country because they were turned off, they suddenly couldn't rely on that. And, you know, the reporting around that, as Elon Musk said, he was worried about World War III. Might be, good motives for avoiding it, but it still says one person can turn this off. And you think about Elon Musk as well. This is a man who said that civil war is inevitable in the UK. He's appeared on stage with Tommy Robinson. He has political views, and when he decides to make these sort of political decisions, because that's what it was in Ukraine, a geopolitical decision, he's the one who makes that. I mean, there are competitors here, but no one's done it as well as Starlink. That graphic, the map we saw of Starlink satellites, more than everyone else, combined. People are trying to get there. China's trying to launch its low Earth orbit constellation. What's striking is that this is previously the capacity of nation states. We saw the new head of MI6 warning about this, that technology used to be nation states, then it's corporations, now it's individuals. Elon Musk, I think, is exactly the sort of person she's talking about.
It's so interesting. And I was just looking at that, the world, as you can see, with all the satellites, I just can't get my head around how many there are. I mean, this has got so much more of a big thing in the last, few years? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's once every 5 hours. That's how often we were getting a new satellite. That's going to increase because I think they're around 9,000 now. They want to get up to 42,000. That's before Amazon do their version. It's before China does their version. And it's revolutionary. The tech is fantastic. As I was saying, we use it here at Sky News, and it makes all sorts of things possible that weren't before. It's just because they've gone and done it so quickly. The innovation has been so rapid. A lot of people are thinking, do we need to think about this a bit more? Do we need, a UN body or whatever to look at this?
I mean, I think that the interesting thing, if you look at a continent as Africa as a whole, rather than the specifics of, certain groups of leadership in a civil war in Sudan, is fast internet can reach, billions of people that otherwise wouldn't get it. Those countries are not going to lay fibre cables anytime soon, and now they won't have to. And that's a huge infrastructure spend saved for the countries based on what they're doing, obviously, by launching these satellites. It's interesting timing, which I think was not planned, but yesterday there was talk that they're going to file for an IPO. This is still a privately held company, SpaceX.
What's an IPO, sorry?
An initial public offering, so people can then buy shares on it. It'll be traded like any other company. Reports, we don't know yet, that it could, be another one of his companies that'd be valued, over $1 trillion. And there, I think what's interesting and mentioned, because this will be the next thing that we discuss in 6 months or a year's time, is putting data centres in space. And this is, again, where you just have to pivot back to his extraordinary innovation. At the moment, the world is spending a fortune on data centres
and what,
to
just
power
explain
AI.
That's an AI
This
data
is
centre.
rather than a computer down here. All our computers are now powered somewhere off-site. And we all talk about the energy that's using, the water that it uses to cool it. And what's exciting about this is you put them in space. It's cold, you don't need the cooling technology. It's free power because they'll be covered in solar panels. And again, what comes with this terrifying, legitimate point that this man is a single man, unelected, with great power over all of our lives, is transformational innovation.
So interesting, Tom. Thank you so much indeed. I just want to take you to Ali Pali and to the darts because something pretty extraordinary happened last night. So this is the first round. I think we can show you the footage now. This is the first round of the World Darts Championship. And this is the moment when Charlie Manby, he's 20 years old, he wins the game, right? He fights back to win. But look at the other guy. I want you to look at Cameron Menzies. The guy's knocked out, because in the background, you can just see him there. He is putting out that firework with his hand. He then punches the drinks table, and he's taken to hospital after that as well, with blood on his knuckles. So a pretty extraordinary moment there at Ali Pali last night. He's put out a statement to apologise for what happened. He said he's sorry that he reacted in the manner that he did. It's not an excuse, but I have a lot of things on my mind recently. And he said it hasn't been an easy time for him because his uncle Gary passed away recently.
So the initial kind of reading up on this, I was like, not cool. We don't like bad losers. And he's obviously apologised, and it wasn't cool. He got booed a bit, and he sort of immediately sort of held his hands up to the crowd. He did still, with a broken hand, in the end, give a hug, shake hands. So it was a moment of fury, losing a match that matters so very much to you, that led to something that no one should do. But I think he apologised quite quickly.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he did.
And in that sense, I think, particularly because he did give the guy, but you can see why he didn't want to do a normal handshake because his hand was bleeding.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that was quite an interesting pivot in the space of a few seconds.
I think a lot of people will have sympathy because, look, many people in a moment of madness has done something they regret, and look, he's obviously got a lot going on in the background as well. Lots more coming up. We'll be returning to Sydney, of course, to talk about the latest developments in that horror attack on Bondi Beach. More coming out about those two men who carried out the attack.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf. Good morning from me as well. Let's get to it.
As Australia grieves, authorities reveal the gunmen in the Bondi Beach attack were inspired by Islamic State.
Donald Trump demands the BBC pay $10 billion as he files his lawsuit for defamation.
The unemployment figures are out and we'll tell you who's been hit the worst.
And have you ever wondered just how many satellites Elon Musk's Starlink has put into the sky?
We'll tell you the answer to that and why their internet services are being used in ways you might not expect.
Good morning and welcome. We're starting with the ongoing coverage of that horrific attack on Bondi Beach because authorities in Australia have begun to release details about the two gunmen as the nation grieves the deadliest attack in nearly 3 decades. Well, police have said that the father and the son were inspired by Islamic State. They found IS flags and explosive devices in their car. Authorities are also investigating why the pair made a trip to the Philippines last month. There's lots moving today, so let's bring in Jonathan Samuels, who's in Sydney for us. Jonathan, a very good morning from here. Take it away.
Yes, good evening from Sydney and Bondi Beach. We're standing just yards from where the massacre happened 2 days ago on Sunday evening. And just over to my right, a huge crowd. Thousands of people have now gathered. There is a huge pile of flowers. People have been bringing flowers all day, leaving cards and messages. And now what is happening is that rabbis and Jewish leaders are giving speeches and saying prayers to rounds of applause from the crowd. And it's not just Jewish people here, not by any means. People of all faiths and of no faith have gathered to pay their respects and also show their support for the Jewish community here in Sydney and wider Australia. Well, the Prime Minister has called for unity, but some in that Jewish community say that the government simply hasn't done enough to protect people, as our correspondent Cordelia Lynch now reports.
Amidst the grief comes the slow drip of revelations. The Australian Prime Minister confirming the alleged gunmen who carried out the deadly massacre here on Bondi Beach appeared to be motivated by Islamic State ideology. For a Jewish community that feels deeply exposed, he tried to offer words of reassurance.
My message to Jewish Australians is that we stand with you as a nation. We embrace you at what is a terrible time. These anti-Semitic terrorist attacks will not be successful with their objective, which is to divide us as a nation.
But at the Central Synagogue in Sydney, those words ring hollow for Daniel Lukowitz.
He's done nothing for 2 years as the country became increasingly divided into the Jewish community and large groups that were vilifying the Jewish community.
Do you hold him responsible for this attack?
He has Jewish blood on his hands, and not for anything specific that he has done, but specifically for things that he has not done. Since October the 9th, which was less than 48 hours since the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, there was a riot at the Sydney Opera House, and people there calling in English and Arabic for violence toward Jews.
He did, though, the Prime Minister, condemn those protests.
The condemnation was largely absent or meek at best, and it wasn't relentless, and it clearly had no impact because we even had Australian politicians turning up to these protests.
The authorities are now investigating the days leading up to Australia's worst massacre in 3 decades. The police revealing the alleged attackers recently visited the Philippines, a country that's long dealt with Islamic militants in parts of the south.
I can confirm that they did travel to the Philippines. The reasons why they went to the Philippines and the purpose of that and where they went when they were there is under investigation at the moment. I also confirm that the vehicle, which is registered to the younger male, contained IEDs, but I also confirm that it contained 2 homemade ISIS flags.
Whether Australia's government has done enough to tackle anti-Semitism is now under intense scrutiny. Whatever the rights or wrongs, at the core of this tragedy is a group of people that no longer feel safe in the country they call home.
And Cordelia joins me now. Cordelia, the investigation obviously very much underway, and we're learning more hour by hour, it seems, about these 2 gunmen.
That's right. We've been speaking to military and intelligence sources inside the Philippines. They have confirmed that these 2 men entered the country on November the 1st and they left on the 28th. Now, we understand that they landed in Davao City. They then travelled by land, we understand, to Marawi, Lanao, Del Sur. Now, why does this matter? This area is an area that has been connected to Islamic extremism in the past. It's had a lot of militant activity at its apex in 2017 when there was a big surge by IS militants there. Now, there were reports that the 2 men were involved in military-style training. Our sources say they are unable to confirm yet if that did take place, but that is a clear line of investigation focused in and around this area, and that there are 2 well-established terror groups that they are looking into as to whether they had some connection with these 2 men. Now, we understand that the 50-year-old father, Sajid, entered on an Indian passport. His 24-year-old son, Naveed, came in on an Australian passport. The National Bureau of Investigation, which is effectively the Philippines FBI, say they are using government agencies to try and backtrack the activities, ultimately to trace what these men did on the ground, who they spoke to, what they were there for, and whether it was in any way a contributing factor in them planning this attack.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it, that detail? And we'll learn more, of course, as the days progress. But that will be very worrying for the government and for the authorities here in Australia. What is also concerning for the Prime Minister is that he's under a lot of pressure now, saying that he ignored warnings. We've seen a big rise in anti-Semitism in this country.
That's right. Now, Anthony Albanese actually appointed himself a woman called Gillian Siegel to oversee effectively a number of policies and procedures to try and curb and tackle anti-Semitism. Now, he is accused of not effectively implementing those recommendations, and some in the Jewish community here say that has contributed to a rise in anti-Semitism within Australia, and that it's made them unsafe, made them feel unprotected. Now, Anthony Albanese maintains that actually they've done a lot on hate speech and hate laws. They've done a lot to try and contribute more funding to protect Jewish institutions. But it's not enough to reassure people yet. And right now, this community feels exposed.
Yeah, it really does. Cordelia, for the moment, thank you very much. Well, this attack was the country's deadliest in, nearly 3 decades now. And through the hardship, some of the best of humanity has been on display. But it's one quick decision by one man that really has captured the attention of the world. Ahmed al-Ahmed bravely snatched the weapon from one of the terrorists and was shot multiple times. He's been hailed the hero of Bondi Beach, and now around £750,000 has been raised for him as he recovers and undergoes more operations in hospital.
Very strong. Thank you very much. Your heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Well, the Australian Prime Minister has visited the 43-year-old shop owner and given him his best wishes as he recovers, saying he represents the very best of his country. Well, that's it from Bondi for the moment. The prayers, the speeches continue as evening really sets in now. People remembering what happened 2 days ago. There are plenty of tears, plenty of hugs. This community is coming together, not just the Jewish community, but the whole of the Bondi community, which is famous for welcoming people from around the globe. Wilfred and Sophy.
Jonathan, we can really feel that energy behind you as well. Thank you so much for bringing it to us.
More from Jonathan throughout the programme, of course. Now, some breaking news in the last hour. Unemployment data. Cross Gurpreet's here to break it down for us. And Gurpreet, the headline being that the unemployment rate rose to 5.1%, up just marginally, of course, from the prior month at 5%. But there's a lot more under the surface.
Yeah, there's always more under the surface, Wilf. 5.1%, as you said, that wasn't surprising. We were expecting it to climb that high. But it's disappointing nevertheless. It's the highest unemployment rate now that we've seen since early 2021, so during the pandemic, basically. And to give you a sense of what that really means, if we look at the last year, 171,000 people have disappeared of company payrolls. And it's not just 171,000 people being sacked. It might be a mixture of people retiring, not being replaced, employers kind of curtailing graduate recruitment. It's quite a lot of stuff is happening under the surface, but overall it means that almost 200,000 people have disappeared from company payrolls. And so there are more people out there looking for even fewer jobs. If we look at vacancies in this country, well, they've been pretty much consistently shrinking quarter on quarter since the middle of 2022, so about May 2022. There's been a bit of respite here and there, and actually the most recent figures suggest that they're flat, but we're talking about almost 300 to 400,000 fewer vacancies in the economy than we had back in 2022. And I think a really good way to think about it is to look at the ratio of unemployed people to jobs that are out there. And now we have 2.5 people per job who are unemployed. And this time last year, it was about 1.8. So it's definitely got more competitive out there. And I think it's worth saying that it's often like younger people and lower skilled people that are really bearing the brunt of this. Because if we look at where the vacancies are shrinking in the economy, it's in those entry-level jobs. It's in sectors like retail and hospitality, where a lot of people get their first shot in the labour market. It might be before you go to university or after you've left college, your first job. And that's where they're really shrinking. And also, there's a lot happening in the graduate market as well. We don't exactly know what's happening with AI, but there's a bit of research that's come out showing that employers are accelerating their take-up of AI, and actually higher employment taxes, things like NICs, might be encouraging people to make the investments, or businesses to make the investments that they may not have done. But as I said, it's really having an impact on young people, in particular the youth unemployment rate now at 16%. And all of this is before we even get to look at the people who aren't even showing up in the unemployment figures because they're economically inactive, which means that they're not even looking for work.
I mean, this is it, like the kind of narrative of a sustained worsening of the jobs market. In other words, more people looking for jobs that just aren't there. I tried to pick this up, actually, with a government interview with Stephen Kinnock, the health minister, and basically just put it to him whether or not, a very simple question, whether or not the unemployment rate has got worse under Labour.
We've also created hundreds of thousands of new jobs in our country. We've had the highest growth rate. Sorry,
I'm going to come in because you're talking about growth rates. You're talking about growth rates. I'm asking you, do you accept unemployment has got worse under Labour? I've just read out the statistics that show it has. So do you accept that?
Well, the way to create more jobs is to create growth, and that is what this government is completely focused on doing. That's why we've had billions of pounds of additional investment.
It's a really simple question. Do you accept unemployment's got worse under Labour? It has.
I would say that we are creating more jobs in our country. We are doing more in terms of an industrial strategy to get our economy back up and running after 14 years of neglect and incompetence. We've been hit by a completely botched Brexit, by the years of austerity.
I mean, Gabriel has got worse, right? You know, that is a fact. And there is a genuine debate about why that's happened. I think your comments about AI are really, really interesting and important. But it does feel like the government has to at least accept that this has happened over the last year to try and find out a solution.
Yeah, I think often when things happen in the economy, there's a tendency to sort of blame policymakers. So this has happened on your watch, it's your fault. Remember when inflation went up, a lot of that was to do with things that were happening outside of this country, but there's a rush to blame policymakers in this country. And often the government will point to other external factors where they're not to blame. But in this case, I think it's pretty clear that a government policy on employment taxes, on national insurance contribution increases, has had a material impact on employment in this country, particularly in those sectors where there are low wage but high employment sectors like retail, where we're seeing that vacancies are shrinking. And the evidence is there right in front of us.
I would just say an additional point to his attempts to dodge your very legitimate question on the unemployment rate. He actually said, we've created hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Yeah.
It was a false response.
Yeah.
As the data shows today, there's been 200,000 jobs that have been lost over the last 12 months. So you also kind of get to the point, and this happens in other areas of government where you question the comms, which is, I think, everybody watching. We've just broken down the data with Gabriel, and they could acknowledge, this has been disappointing, but we're investing and it's going to turn around and it takes time. Yeah. But if you just deny the facts with a false fact yourself, it really doesn't do yourself any favours on the comms side of things.
Yeah. Thanks, Everyone can see it. It's all out there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gabriel.
Gabriel, thanks so much. Now, Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion in a defamation lawsuit filed overnight, accusing the corporation of putting terrible words in my mouth.
So it's all over a Panorama documentary that edited one of his speeches to make it seem like he'd encouraged the Capitol Hill riot in 2021. Well, Oliver is here with us. Just break this down for us. What's going on?
So a 33-page claim has been put before this court in Florida, and it's peppered with language like the BBC acted in a false, defamatory, deceptive, disparaging, inflammatory and malicious way against Donald Trump when it cut those two videos together. Now, the BBC apologised for the way that it spliced the videos together last month, and it hasn't really responded to this suit because, remember, first of all, he was going to sue them for $1 billion, then it jumped to $5 billion, now it's at $10 billion. But they say that their position remains unchanged. Essentially, the BBC doesn't believe that it has got a case to answer, and that's because it's very difficult in America, where you've got the Constitution, which basically protects free speech under the First Amendment. You've also, as a politician, got to prove that there was actual malice behind the BBC's action. And so the BBC is probably hoping that this will go away. But as we all know, the President is a very, very litigious man.
Well, I guess we're waiting for all sorts of bits of reaction to it, and including from the BBC. But obviously, the BBC is funded, though not operationally influenced by the government. Waiting for their response.
Yeah, well, we've already had calls from UK politicians. So Ed Davey from the Liberal Democrats saying that Sir Keir Starmer needs to stand up for the BBC and not allow President Trump to basically bully them into this lawsuit. We haven't had a response from the Prime Minister, but we have this morning heard from Stephen Kinnock, the Adult Social Care Minister, speaking to you, and this is what he had to say about what the BBC should or should not be doing.
It's absolutely right that the BBC is an independent organisation. I think they have apologised for one or two of the mistakes that were made in that Panorama programme, but they've also been very clear that there is no case to answer in terms of Mr. Trump's accusations on the broader point about libel or defamation. So, I think it's right that the BBC stands firm on that point. Yes, there were some mistakes made in that particular piece of film, but I think the broader argument that they were making, they're right to stick by their guns on that, and I hope that they will continue to do so as an independent organisation, of course funded by the licence fee.
Now, essentially, the BBC could go to the court and ask for the judge to throw this case out. That's probably what we're going to see could happen in the first instance. But if the judge decides that there is merit to this case and it'll continue, we could enter quite a long, protracted legal battle where the BBC could be subpoenaed, they could be brought before the court, there could be depositions where people are brought under oath.
Going to be one to watch, Oliver. Thanks so much for that. Now, doctors in England and Wales have accused Wes Streeting of scaremongering over their planned 5-day strike, which will begin tomorrow.
So the union is continuing to ask for more money, but the government has at the same time said that dentists, not resident doctors, but dentists, are going to be paid more under reforms to their industry. Well, our political correspondent Mario Aurora is here. I find this so interesting, the dentist story, right, because as many people will, I think, identify with at home, it's so difficult to get an appointment with an NHS dentist. So the government are trying to tackle this by basically giving them more money to treat urgent cases, right?
Yeah, so they're giving them more money to incentivise them to take on urgent care. Now, when you were interviewing the Minister at Kinnock before, he was also clear to say this isn't new money, this is redirecting funds. So they are moving money from dentist budgets from one area into urgent care. And therefore, there will always be knock-on effects of that. Let's see how that all pans out. But the government is arguing that actually, at the moment, NHS dentists don't necessarily have to take on urgent treatment, and therefore it makes it much more difficult for people to get urgent treatment. They often have to go to a different dental clinic that maybe is nowhere near where they live. They've got to drive elsewhere and then pay privately because they're so desperate.
So just listen to you, because it's being redirected. Does that mean that it's going to be harder to get routine care then, basically, with your NHS dentist, like your kind of regular checkup?
Well, this is what we don't know, right?
Yeah,
but that seems to me like perhaps a possibility. The money is coming from somewhere, and that is the danger. But what the government is arguing is that people are in desperate situations. They might have, have tooth decay and multiple teeth or something that's really urgent, and therefore they're desperate. And people like that need to actually be able to access those services. Difficulty is it's hard enough, as you were saying, to get any kind of appointment with an NHS dentist. To even register with an NHS dentist is difficult as it is. And he was talking about those golden hellos for dentist deserts. Well, is that going to be enough to incentivise those dentists to go to those areas of greatest need? We don't know that yet.
Mark, great stuff. Thank you very much. Let's continue this discussion. We're joined now by Dr. Maggie Andy, a dentist, to discuss all of this. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks
good morning, both.
Thanks
nice
for
to see you.
joining us. Do you welcome this development?
Absolutely. I think it's been a long time coming. I think for a long, long time, NHS dentists have been given a bit of a bad rap. They're only in it for the money, there's not enough funding, and patients can't get appointments. So I think finally having an opportunity for the most vulnerable people to actually get help. And when I say get help, I mean get help in normal working hours. I think it's extremely important and extremely timely.
I was really struck by what Mari was just saying there about how this is not new money, it's redirected money. So does that mean that as a result of them prioritising, understandably, really urgent care if someone might be able to, lose a teeth or whatever it is, does that mean it's actually going to be harder to get your routine checkups with an NHS dentist?
It shouldn't be harder. I think the idea is to make sure that if they've done this correctly, the services are going to be available in all areas. I think the problem we've got at the moment is there's a big divide. There's some areas where actually dentists have very, very large waiting lists, and then there's some areas where, as you were just discussing with the golden hello, actually you can walk straight into a practice, but you're in the middle of nowhere. So I think the plan now is to try and see if you can get the scope so that in the big cities where most deprivation is being registered, everyone can just walk in and hopefully at some point these waiting lists will come down because by doing things like, for instance, getting dental nurses to perhaps start applying fluoride on the children, you're trying to free up dentists' time so that those patients that need the most complex care can be sorted.
And just give us a snapshot of how bad the problem is. I mean, the nation's dental care is where relative to history and relative to other countries? Relative
to other countries, we're OK. Let's be fair on that, because we have an NHS system. You've got to understand that about 49% of people who access NHS care don't pay for it. You're not going to find that figure in many, many countries. In a lot of people are just left, to their own devices, left in pain. Now, what we're trying to do at the moment is we've got a situation where the vast majority of people that need care can get it, but they're sitting on waiting lists. The vast majority of people that need a lot of care can't get it because dentists simply can't afford to treat them. Even if you walked into a dentist and say you needed, a few teeth removed and a denture made, at this moment in time it's very difficult to access that on the NHS without the dentist making a loss. So what they're trying to do is incentivise dentists so that at least you can provide this care. The dentist doesn't have to think, gosh, I can't pay my staff here, and they can do what they did when they got into the profession, which is actually help people that need help and reduce this thing of if you can't pay privately for a denture, for instance, you can't get one.
You talk there about, dentists getting into the profession because they want to help people who need help. Because there is a kind of stereotype, I think it's probably fair to say, that actually part of this problem is caused by the fact that dentists are shunning the NHS because they can make way more money on, teeth whitening or whatever it is privately. And actually, perhaps dentists need to take on more NHS work, even if it's worse paid.
100%. I mean, I tell you what, I can use my practice as an example. Very unusual. My associates are young dentists that come in and work with you, work privately. I own the practice and I see the NHS patients. Now, when I was growing up in dentistry, 20-odd years ago, that was unheard of. My bosses at the time would see all the private patients and we'd learn on the NHS. But what it is, you've got kids who are coming into the profession, they've got overheads, they've got student loans, they've got everything to pay back, and we can't expect them to work for, no profit, in effect. So we, dentists who own the practice, will generally see the NHS patients because actually we can give that, we can do that. It's our practice who wants to care. The other dentists want to care too, but that profit margin can be made up by someone else working for you privately. Yeah. The dentists that this new system will help you've got to understand, not everybody's got associates. There will be those smaller NHS practices where it's just 1 or 2 dentists, and now they can help too because they'll be like, actually, do you know what, we can help because we're now being paid to do this and we don't have to worry about our business going under because the overheads are so low.
Can I just wrap up with a big picture question about how good we are as a nation at proper education from a young age, about, I guess it's diet, as well as sort of regularity and of teeth cleaning and all of that. Are we on top of that or not?
We're relatively on top of it, but I think we could do better. I think we're quite blessed in England because obviously schools, nurseries, lots of early care settings, childminders are now being taught what to do, parents are being taught what to do, they bring their kids, we can treat children from age 3 and up. But when you look at us across the board, compared to other countries, I think from an education perspective, we're still behind, honestly. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I think the perception has got to change because, as you said earlier, it's becoming that people are thinking of dentists as a place to go for cosmetic care or a place to go when they're in pain. We need to start changing the narrative and get people back to when we were younger. And you know what? You go to the dentist twice a year, they count your teeth, make sure you're OK, give you advice, and you'd grow up with no fillings. And that's what we're hoping for.
I loved your advice last time you were on. Do you remember this? That actually kids should eat sweets in one go.
Yeah,
1 day a week,
100%.
eat
Sugar
loads
Saturday.
of sweets, sugar Saturday, rather than a little bit every day. And I love that. Better for your teeth, apparently.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess adults should do that too.
I'm going to bring that in, Sugar Saturday.
And don't forget, water's going to be fluoridated again. Don't forget that. We still have the 111 system. A lot of people still aren't aware of that. If you're in pain, you can call 111 any time of day, ask for dental, and they will find you an option and a solution.
So Sugar Saturday and then drink a pint of water afterwards, basically.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Thanks very much.
All right, my absolute pleasure.
Dr. Maggie Addy there, thank you very much. After the break, we're going to talk about homelessness, particularly as it relates to young children and impacting their upbringing. We'll be right back.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. We've had some more information on the death of the film director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, who was stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home. Their son has been arrested on suspicion of murdering his parents.
Well, Donald Trump has also been heavily criticised for his extraordinary attack on Rob Reiner, where he described him as tortured and struggling with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. So that obviously a reference to the fact that Rob Reiner was a Trump critic before his death. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner's report does contain flash photography.
Rob and Michelle Reiner's home is dressed for Christmas. Wreaths on the gate and giant baubles on the tree. No hint of the horror that unfolded inside here. Reiner, one of Hollywood's most acclaimed film directors, and photographer wife Michelle found stabbed to death. The man arrested for murder is their son Nick, pictured here between the couple. And in the back of this family photo, aged 32, he'd struggled with drug addiction and mental health issues.
I have a famous dad and a famous grandpa, and they sort of, that fame sort of informs who you are. So I wanted to etch out my own identity with a more rebellious, angry, drug-addicted sort of persona.
The night before the couple's death, Nick had attended a Christmas party with them, thrown by talk show host Conan O'Brien. Other guests said Nick's behaviour was erratic and worrying.
We have our robbery homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder.
What are you doing?
Reiner acted in sitcoms and films, but was best known as a director.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The vision behind iconic hits like A Few Good Men
Just have an early meeting.
and When Harry Met Sally. Reiner was a Democratic Party activist and vocal critic of President Donald Trump. In response to Reiner's death, Trump posted this on social media. He said Reiner had died because of the anger he caused others and that he had a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS, adding that Reiner had a raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump. Even in the current administration, where normal codes of conduct and standards of decency that you'd expect from a president no longer apply, there is disgust here that the nightmare that unfolded in this House could be exploited to make political statements.
Leave it to our president. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. I'm not surprised. It's disgusting, though.
Donald Trump is not a human being. He doesn't have any blood in his vein.
Republicans are also condemning Trump's statement. Former ally Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that this is a family tragedy, not politics, and should be met with empathy. The Reiner's murder has been described as a Greek tragedy. A man who brought such joy with his art, whose movies will live on. His own life ended in the cruelest way imaginable. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Now, I want to talk about a story that I'm really pleased that we're doing today, because I feel like it's one of these hidden problems that we have in the UK at the minute. Homelessness among children, because over the last year, nearly a third of teachers in England have personally taught a child who's defined as homeless.
It's just one finding from a survey by Shelter that stands out. The charity also discovered that more than half of teachers in England worked at a school where at least one child was homeless.
So it just, I guess, lays bare the scale of the problem. Just to have a look at some of these stats in a bit more detail. This is according to the charity Shelter. So more than 7,000 state school teachers surveyed. Nearly a third say that they have personally taught or interacted with a child who was homeless over the last year. The survey also found teachers in London by far the most likely to teach children who are homeless. Nearly half, 45% of those surveyed saying they'd personally worked with a child experiencing this.
Well, we're joined now by the Director of Campaigns, Policy and Communication at Shelter, Myra McRae. Thanks so much for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Just expand on a couple of those statistics that we showed. I mean, there's a lot in your report to come to, but this is such a damaging problem for those young people that are experiencing it.
Absolutely, and let me put it in scale a little bit, because Shelter research has also shown that there are actually now over 175,000 children who are homeless right now living in England. And so that's why we really wanted to find out a little bit more, not just about the shocking number that we're seeing, but about the impact that it's actually having on children and families and communities. And so that's why we did the survey with the Teachers Union, NAS, UWT, to really talk to teachers about the impact it's having on children. And the findings are really shocking. We can see that the housing emergency is absolutely robbing children of a safe and secure home, and it's actually jeopardising their education. So we also found that 3/4 of the teachers who responded to the survey talked about how homelessness is driving poor performance in exams or assessments. And that's something at Shelter that, we see every day. We're witnessing this impact and, the impact now and the impact it's going to have on children's future. And teachers are echoing that. So we're also hearing from the research that teachers are seeing children coming to school absolutely exhausted. They're having to travel for miles and miles, for hours sometimes, to get to school because they've been placed in really grim temporary accommodation that's miles and miles away from the school. So, having to get up super early to get to school. They're also coming into school really tired because they're living in, one-room B&Bs and bedsits, really cramped conditions, having to share beds. That's no way to come into school to learn. Children are actually missing days of school, and we see that all of this is having a huge mental health toll in the children that they're teaching.
I'm really glad we're talking about this. When we were having a chat with the team, yesterday, and they kind of mentioned this research, I was so pleased because it's a story that I feel is one of these slightly hidden things that is having a huge impact on so many people. I did some filming earlier this year at a school in Peckham in South London, and it was actually about something completely different. It was about a mobile phone ban. And they were saying that they effectively banned phones, but they couldn't completely ban phones because of the number of kids in this school who were classified as homeless. So in other words, they've had to move away from their area, often. And they were just describing to me, often for hours and hours away. And so they needed to work out how to get home afterwards, right? Because their whole lives have been ripped up. And it really got me thinking about the impact that it's having on kids. I mean, if you're adding 2-3 hours commute to your day, firstly, it has an impact on your social life at a really important time of your life, but also your grades as well.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine coming into school, you have woken up really early, you're travelling across, for hours and hours to get to school. You haven't had a good night's sleep because you're in a really cramped condition, you're sharing beds. You likely haven't had, a hot meal because some of the temporary accommodation that we see, that Shelter sees that children are forced to live in, doesn't have a kitchen, doesn't have a place to cook food. And on top of that, you're thinking, you're worried and you're scared about where you're going to be that night. And temporary accommodation by its very nature is supposed to be temporary. But it's very insecure. Children are spending many years of their life living in what is supposed to be temporary accommodation, not sure where they're going to spend the next week, not sure where they're going to spend the next month. Children shouldn't have to, go into school worrying about things like that.
And also, I have a Ukrainian friend who, I'm sure they won't mind me saying this kind of anonymously. They've had to move accommodation as a refugee from Ukraine recently. And she was explaining why she's decided to keep her kids at the same school, because even though this is basically 3 hours that they're having to trek between the new accommodation and the school, she's very, very worried about, at a difficult time in her kids' life at these very important ages, kind of ripping them away from the school and the friends that they've built up, right?
Absolutely, and this is something that as a parent you think about all of the time. Your children are settled, they've got a school that cares for them, and parents want the best things for their kids, and when they're moved miles and miles away, into temporary accommodation. They're doing everything they can to, keep some stability in their children's lives. But there is a solution to this problem. So I don't want to just end on, on the scale and the impact of the issue, because we know what the solution to the problem is. And the reason families and children are homeless is because they don't have an affordable, safe and decent home to live in. And that's why it's really, really important that the government really get going with delivering truly affordable social homes, because that's what's going to end the housing emergency. But we know that that's going to take time. And in the meantime, that's why public support for charities like Shelter is so important, because we are on the front lines every day supporting families and children through these really difficult situations and trying to find solutions for them.
Thanks very much indeed.
Now, Elon Musk's success in space has been achieved with extraordinary speed. His company Starlink has sent more satellites into orbit than everybody else combined. But our data and forensics team has found 21% of Starlink activity occurs in unlicensed countries.
So what is an unlicensed country? Well, it's the country like Sudan, for example, where the militant rapid support forces use the network in the ongoing civil war there. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has been digging into this. Here's a taste of his report.
It is a sleek, glossy vision. High-speed internet, more luxury than utility. Starlink, which is owned by SpaceX, uses receivers like this to deliver internet anywhere, no matter how remote. And it's enabled the world's richest man to dominate space too. But anyone being able to get internet anywhere means exactly that. Anyone, including people in places who you might prefer not have access at all. This is Sudan. Members of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, who have been accused of massacring civilians and other war crimes, have fitted Starlink terminals to their vehicles. An analysis by Sky's Data and Forensics Unit shows that 21% of global Starlink traffic originates from unauthorized locations like Sudan.
The fact that you're seeing increasingly RSF fighters advertise it on platforms like Facebook, platforms like TikTok, that's meant to essentially be part of the narrative warfare, displaying or showing off that they have more advanced electronic capabilities.
Starlink didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, but they have previously said, on the rare occasions we identify a violation, we take appropriate action, including working with law enforcement agencies around the world.
Well, Tom joins us now. And Tom, I think what is incredibly striking about this, and we showed the numbers earlier, the number of satellites they're launching, was mentioned in the intro as well. He has drastically changed the economics for this and allowed himself to just massively undercut all other rivals.
Yeah, to the extent that his rivals are now using his rockets to go into space, whether it's Amazon. The launch, I think, now is around $1,500 per kilogram to put something into space. That makes it really, really affordable. So all these questions of power, I think the first thing to note is that he's done this by the innovation, and that's why he's in this position, He has earned that control, if it makes sense. But now I think people are starting to as well, he is in control of that by himself, and he's quite a capricious man as well. So is that the best situation for the world to be in?
Yeah, on that, because I think it is interesting. We're talking effectively about kind of critical infrastructure, if you think about it, and we can be quite squeamish about giving control of critical infrastructure away to foreign powers, let alone individuals. I'm thinking about Huawei, for example, the Chinese firm. I mean, how much of a concern is it putting this amount of power in one person's hand?
I mean, as it stands, it is a private company, and it has got there through dint of it. It's being used increasingly. But it's not like American GPS, for instance, which we all use, but that's an American military satellite. Now, China, say, has its own rival to that, the Beidou constellation. As it stands, it's not a huge amount of global connectivity in terms of how you get on the internet. But in those edge cases, those remote cases, whether it's Ukraine, Sudan, Jamaica, where it was really useful for aid, it does sort of approach monopoly status in those parts. So it is on the, most of us connect through broadband, things like that. But in those remote places, there really is no rival.
Yeah, of course, but to the next stage of this, we discussed it briefly next hour, he might be putting, data centres in space, and that might be where many data centres are housed, if that's the right word, in 10 years' time or something. The question, though, is how do you push back against it when it's in space? We can all say we want to regulate TV networks or decide or not to introduce the Online Safety Act for how we use it, but you can't really regulate space in the same kind of way.
Yeah, you have these treaties, these global bodies, but it really does require on people just sort of agreeing on it and doing it, whether that was Russia and the US during the Cold War. They're probably a bit further behind that right now. And as it stands, you know, SpaceX, if you have an issue with it, you're going to settle it under Texas law because that's where it is debated. And you can see, you know, just the growth of this. Although it wasn't really anything. Well, it wasn't anything until 2019. Now it's more satellites than any other person combined.
I can't get over this.
And
Are they all going to start crashing into each other? Is this space junk?
Space junk, yeah.
This is a thing, right? Look at it.
And if you think they want to go from sort of 9,000 today to 42,000, that's before everyone else gets involved, including China.
But that's another reason why he's rushing to launch as many as possible, because, you know, he doesn't have to pay rent for the buildings. The more he gets up there, the more of the installation he kind of controls.
And it's very much the Silicon Valley approach, isn't it? In that, let's get it out there, whether it's Uber, we'll worry about the regulations later, and we'll be the dominant player by that stage. And eventually you get those things around workers' rights, say for Uber. You get there first, and then you can set the terms of it.
Really interesting, as always. Thanks so much, Tom. See you.
Coming up, we are going to be talking personal finances. I'm sure something on all of our minds, your minds as well, as it comes up to Christmas. We've got that money guy, Gabriel Nussbaum, with us.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water, and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Bagher has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Now, let's talk finance coming up. We're going to be talking as well about social media's impact on Christmas and spending. And you might be being hit with all sorts of adverts as well, trying to entice you to spend more.
It's one of those times of year, I think, where we're all thinking an awful lot about money. It's kind of halfway through, kind of between payday. We're all trying to shell out more on Christmas. Christmas presents as well. So to try and navigate our way through that web, the pre-Christmas web, we're joined by the personal finance expert, that money guy, Gabriel Nussbaum. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's kick off and talk about how you think people are feeling. You know, we had the budget a month ago. We talked a little bit about that the day after. Now, obviously, it's one of the busiest months for spending. Are all of your millions of followers kind of engaging with different types of questions now? Are they worried about meeting kind of the payment needs this expensive month?
Yeah, I find this time of year a really interesting point, especially after the budget, because the polls are saying that people are actually feeling really negative at the moment. I don't know if you guys got that impression after the budget. It didn't feel like everyone was filled with joy and extra money in their pockets off the back of that. But it also is a period of the year where people just go above and beyond to spend. It is a spending month of the year. You know, that paycheck comes in early, January one comes in late. Remember that, everybody. Very important to bear that in mind when budgeting. And unfortunately, people go above and beyond for their loved ones. That sounds lovely, but it hurts them later down the line.
Can I ask about this? Because, look, I think you're completely right. You know, this is the time when we all want to spend money on people that we love, and it can be a difficult time of year for people to kind of rein that in. There's an awful lot of buy now, pay later deals, which feels to me like that's completely exploded. What's your take on that? Because some people would say, actually, if you can get the 0% interest, that it's a great way of spreading payments. Others would say that, actually, this could be leading people into buying things they can't afford.
So I'm personally not the biggest fan of buy now, pay later, because a lot of people use it to buy things they still can't afford. They see it as a bit of a loophole. There are a number of people that simply don't understand the mechanisms of how it works. They see 0% and they think, oh, it's free money that's being given to me to make my life easier. But you still do have to look at everything that you buy and think to yourself, well, can I actually afford it in the first place? Could I have bought this up front, and am I just lightening the load for myself at this point in time? Because if the answer is no, then buy now, pay later sounds great, but might actually just hurt you more and more down the line. It's like current you versus future you, isn't it?
And I guess it's because if you can't pay it off in 3 months or whatever it is, then you get whacked with interest.
Exactly. Like, nothing is free in life. Whenever there are T's and C's involved and, you know, things say shiny 0% right now, doesn't mean that it'll be like that forever. So if you don't have the ability to pay it off down the line, the same with a credit card. If you pay off in full every single month, great tool. If you don't, massive interest.
We've got a Bank of England decision coming up later this week. They're expected to cut. I think it's going to be close, though. It's not sort of nailed on. And people are sort of expecting more cuts next year. But again, with sticky inflation, hard to know exactly what's going to happen. What's your advice to people at the moment if they're weighing up remortgaging or taking out a loan? Should they be fixing? Should they not? Are you getting that question a lot?
I've had that question probably every week for the past 2 to 3 years now. And my answer will always be the same. If you can afford it now, use the information that is available to you right now. No guesswork. OK, it does look like there's going to be another cut before the end of the year. So if you have the ability to wait and it doesn't impact you too much, OK, you can make that educated decision. But ultimately, I've just actually remortgaged myself. And I did it a couple of weeks ago before the news of this further cut coming down the line. And the reason why I did it then was simply because I could afford it then. It made sense to me to do it then and there. And so I made the educated decision knowing what the payments would then be for the next couple of years. So when people ask me 5 years versus 2 years versus do it now versus do it tomorrow, it's always, what is your current situation right now? Can you afford it right now? Can you forecast it and budget it? And if so, then it makes sense to make the move.
The other thing I wanted to ask about was scams. You know, obviously this is shot through the roof. AI is probably making it worse. We all kind of think of you as the expert in this area, but you actually got scammed yourself recently.
I got scammed last week.
This makes us all feel better about this, by the way.
You're delighted about
even
you being
Gabriel
scammed.
This is horrific for me because, like I said, I'm meant to be that money guy. I should not be getting scammed. I'm meant to be telling people about the scams. And I fell for one. I don't know if you would actually classify it as a scam, but it was definitely me being taken advantage of as a consumer.
What happened?
So I went to purchase a flight, and it was classic through Google Flights. You go and you get your various different options underneath when you search for a flight, and it gives you the airline, obviously, which most people book direct with, you know, your Booking.coms, your Expedias, but it gives you a couple of extra websites, third-party websites, and normally I don't book with them just because I prefer the safety of mine to book direct with an airline. But in this case, I went onto it, and what happens is when you go on these third-party websites, you often click through right to the end, and suddenly the price jumps. And you're like, oh, it's actually cheaper with the airline. I'm going to go book back with the airline before I hit checkout. This time, it got me all the way to the final page, and it went, no, it's still cheaper. You're saving yourself. Oh, I saved over £100 on this flight, which is going to be next month. And I thought to myself, you know what, great, I've actually found one. It's actually worked for once. Normally I book direct with the airline. I'm going to go ahead with it. I hit book, I hit pay, and about 5 minutes later, the company called me. I checked it was the right number. I did all of the research. And they said, you actually need to pay us £180 because your flight has been waitlisted and partially booked. I'd never heard these terms before in my entire life. £180 to actually get your flight booked. And I said, no, give me a full refund. They said, no, you've booked a non-refundable flight. To get a refund, we can give you back £180 less than you've paid.
Oh.
And I was starting to question things here. Yeah, it felt a little bit off, didn't it?
Certainly does. I guess, yeah, not good to hear that happened, but I guess these things can. You've got to check on all the websites. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you as always. And we wish you a fun trip. I hope it still goes ahead.
Yeah. Well, I did get my money back. I didn't make that.
Yeah, no, exactly. But also it just shows, like, you know, these are sophisticated scamming operations and, like, anyone, absolutely anyone, can be impacted by it. Thanks very much indeed. Now, if you are a line biker like me or a cyclist like Wilf, we've got news for you, because if you pass by Wandsworth, which is in South West London, the council is now starting to fine cyclists for speeding. So they're issuing kind of £50 fines to anyone going above 12 miles an hour. This story's been uncovered by London Centric, I should say, this kind of new kind of start-up media company. But it's so interesting because, look, this has really split opinion on whether or not cyclists should abide by the speed limit and how they can catch them if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit annoying, doesn't it? But it's the rules. And I think, you know, you've got to enforce it in the same way. The one I would just add, again, not to go back, cyclists that use quickly, jump up on the pavement because there's a bit of traffic in the way and think, I'm not going to get punished for that. Then that's the other area, which, again, is sounding a bit gripey, but, you know, got to follow the rules.
Yeah, I think this is it. It's road users using rules. I know you love a rule.
I do
but
rules.
It is a fair point. Speeding, jumping red lights, all this kind of thing. This is what winds people up when it comes to a minority of cyclists' behaviour. Let us know what you think on that one. mornings@sky.uk. Should cyclists be spined? Speeding.
Spined.
Fined. Not spined.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with all of the day's top stories, including the latest with Jonathan from Australia.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello, good morning. It is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
As Australia grieves, authorities reveal the gunmen in the Bondi Beach attack were inspired by Islamic State.
I'm live in Sydney, where sources confirmed to Sky News that the surviving attacker is out of a coma.
Donald Trump demands the BBC pays billions of dollars as he files his lawsuit for defamation.
The UK's unemployment figure hits a 5-year high. We're going to tell you who's been worse hit.
And have you ever wondered just how many satellites Elon Musk's Starlink have put in space? We'll discuss.
We're telling you the answer to that one. It's a lot, by the way. Spoiler alert. And also why their internet services are being used in ways you might not expect.
Very good morning to you. We begin with the breaking news from Australia. Sources in New South Wales have confirmed to Sky News that Naveed Akram, the alleged gunman in the Bondi Beach shooting, is now out of a coma.
So authorities have now started to release details about Akram and also his father, a second suspected shooter, as obviously the nation is still, and the world is still reeling from the deadliest attack in Australia in 3 decades.
Lots of moving parts today. Let's bring in Jonathan, who's live in Sydney for us. And Jonathan, as well as that headline about one of the attackers coming out of a coma, we've also heard from one of the victims' families.
Yeah, we're also hearing that reports here suggest police are already speaking to that suspected gunman in his hospital bed. But you're right, in the last half an hour, the mother and the brother of the youngest victim, she was just 10 years old, little Matilda, have spoken at a vigil taking place here in Sydney.
But I can't imagine what the monster was standing on that bridge and seeing little girl running for her father to hide with him, and he just put his trigger on her. I don't know. It wasn't just a bullet from a spray. It wasn't an accident. It was a bullet just was fired on her.
Whenever I would ask Matilda if she knew that I loved her, she would immediately say yes. She knew she was loved. She wasn't alone. Thank you.
So brave, little Matilda's family speaking in the last half an hour or so at the vigil here. Well, the Australian Prime Minister has called for unity, but some in the Jewish community say that the government simply hasn't done enough to protect people, as our correspondent Cordelia Lynch now reports.
Amidst the grief comes the slow drip of revelations. The Australian Prime Minister confirming the alleged gunman who carried out the deadly massacre here on Bondi Beach appeared to be motivated by Islamic State ideology. For a Jewish community that feels deeply exposed, he tried to offer words of reassurance.
My message to Jewish Australians is that we stand with you as a nation. We embrace you at what is a terrible time. These anti-Semitic terrorist attacks will not be successful with their objective, which is to divide us as a nation.
But at the Central Synagogue in Sydney, those words ring hollow for Daniel Lukowitz.
He's done nothing for 2 years as the country became increasingly divided into the Jewish community and large groups that were vilifying the Jewish community.
Do you hold him responsible for this attack?
He has Jewish blood on his hands, and not for anything specific that he has done, but specifically for things that he has not done. Since October the 9th, which was less than 48 hours since the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, there was a riot at the Sydney Opera House, and people there calling in English and Arabic for violence toward Jews.
He did, though, the Prime Minister, condemn those protests.
The condemnation was largely absent or meek at best, and it wasn't relentless, and it clearly had no impact because we even had Australian politicians turning up to these protests.
The authorities are now investigating the days leading up to Australia's worst massacre in 3 decades. The police revealing the alleged attackers recently visited the Philippines, a country that's long dealt with Islamic militants in parts of the south.
I can confirm that they did travel to the Philippines. The reasons why they went to the Philippines and the purpose of that and where they went when they were there is under investigation at the moment. I also confirm that the vehicle, which is registered to the younger male, contained IEDs, but I also confirm that it contained 2 homemade ISIS flags.
Whether Australia's government has done enough to tackle anti-Semitism is now under intense scrutiny. Whatever the rights or wrongs, at the core of this tragedy is a group of people that no longer feel safe in the country they call home. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Sydney.
Well, the attack was the country's deadliest in nearly 3 decades, and through the hardship, some of the best of humanity has been on display here. But it is one quick decision by one man that has really captured the world's attention. Ahmed al-Ahmed bravely snatched the weapon from one of the terrorists and was then shot multiple times. He's been hailed the hero of Bondi Beach, and around £750,000 has now been raised for him as he recovers in hospital.
Very strong. Thank you very much. Your heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Well, that's the Australian Prime Minister visiting the 43-year-old shop owner a little earlier. Anthony Albanese says he represents the very best of Australia.
Incredible stuff, and as you said, great to see him being visited there by Anthony Albanese. I just want to go back, if we can, Jonathan, to those comments from Matilda's mother and brother as well, in particular. Just so heartbreaking, but again, so brave. We're seeing so much bravery come forward, and just for them to go and address that gathering shows it, and the words were incredibly powerful.
Yeah, they really were, and we've seen powerful scenes all day today. We're just metres away from where the attack happened, and there's a huge mound of flowers that's growing by the minute. Hundreds and hundreds of people have passed through here today. Some come alone, some come in groups. We saw a whole football team arrive in their kit a bit earlier on, and they lay flowers, they read the cards, and they stand in silence, just reflecting and giving their respects. And it's not just people from the Jewish community, not at all. It's people of all faiths, people of no faith, wanting to come here and say that despite everything you're hearing, we are united with you. And as you say, reflecting on Matilda's mother and brother there, wanting to address the crowd, condemning the gunman who killed that little 10-year-old, but also reassuring the crowd, letting the crowd know that she really was loved by her family. Quite remarkable.
Jonathan, thank you so much. It's so moving to see those scenes there in Sydney. And just the sheer number, you know, it really makes me actually pause and think about the interview that we did yesterday with the Chief Rabbi here in the UK, the Chief Rabbi for the UK and the Commonwealth, who was talking about how moved he had been, and many Jewish people have been, by this outpouring of solidarity towards the community. And look, we can see it there with those pictures from Sydney, an extraordinary number of people making their way down there just to show their support, to show their condolences.
And as he revealed as well, the Chief Rabbi, I guess, will be out there very soon. He said he was about to travel to Australia after the interview yesterday, so no doubt will be there soon to pay his own respects as well. Now, moving on, the UK's unemployment rate has risen to its highest level for nearly 5 years. The Office for National Statistics says the unemployment rate for the period from August to October was 5.1%, up from 5% previously. Well, Gurpreet's here to break it down for us. Gurpreet, that's the headline number. Lots under the surface as well.
Yeah, plenty under the surface. 5.1%, just to point out, that is the highest level we've seen since the beginning of 2021. So the deep days of the pandemic. And to kind of really hammer home what this looks like, if we think about the past year, so like the past year of the Labour government, we've had 171,000 people disappear from company payrolls. And that's a mixture of, people retiring, not being replaced, people being sacked, all sorts is going on. It's not just a straightforward story of people losing their jobs. And at the same time that we've got more people now looking for work, it's also getting more competitive to find a job. Because if we look at the vacancy rate, well, since about the middle of 2022, the number of vacancies in this country pretty much consistently, quarter on quarter, have been shrinking. And we had some respite. Most recent data showed us that in October we had some respite. But we've got maybe 500,000 fewer vacancies now than we had in the middle of 2022. And it means that the number of people per job, so number of unemployed people per job, has risen. So now, on average, it's about 2.5 people for every job. And last year, it was 1.8. So I think those figures on their own just tell you how competitive it's got out there. But it's not the same experience for everyone. It's not the same story for everyone. Because if we look at those vacancies and where those vacancies are shrinking, well, it's in the low-skilled jobs. It's in industries like retail and in hospitality, which we know have been really hard hit by the Chancellor's employment tax increases in the previous budget, so the next increases that you might remember. And then on the graduate employment side as well, there's a lot going on structurally. So the advent of AI, we know that employers are increasing investments in AI. Higher employment taxes might be encouraging them to accelerate those investments. That's something the Bank of England recently pointed out. So there's a lot going on here. But I think just mentioning the fact that there are a lot of entry-level jobs and there are a lot of graduate jobs that are suffering, I mean, the clue is there that it's young people who are really bearing the brunt of this. Something that ONS in its release pointed out today, the youth unemployment rate has hit 16% and it's rising at the fastest pace in the G7.
Mm-hmm. So we've basically got more people chasing fewer jobs, particularly if you are a young person. Very difficult indeed. And look, I interviewed the government minister, Stephen Kinnock, a little bit earlier, and I asked him a very direct question about whether he accepts that unemployment has got worse in the last year of the Labour government.
We've also created hundreds of thousands of new jobs in our country. We've had the highest growth rate.
Sorry, I'm going to come in because you're talking about growth rates. You're talking about growth rates. I'm asking you, do you accept unemployment has got worse under Labour? I've just read out the statistics that show it has. So do you accept that?
Well, the way to create more jobs is to create growth, and that is what this government is completely focused on doing. That's why we've had billions of pounds of additional investment.
It's a really simple question. Do you accept unemployment's got worse under Labour? It has.
I would say that we are creating more jobs in our country. We are doing more in terms of an industrial strategy to get our economy back up and running after 14 years of neglect and incompetence. We've been hit by a completely botched Brexit, by the years of austerity.
Seriously, avoiding the question altogether there. I think the other thing just to pause on as well, Gurpreet, this is all pre the budget taking effect.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
And I guess there's some things that might boost the economy in the budget, like greater spending. There's some things that might hurt the economy in the budget, like higher taxes. What is definitely, I think, removed is the uncertainty. Yeah. And the uncertainty that existed leading up to the budget, I guess, is revealed in this data as well. It's one of the factors behind it.
Yeah, it's definitely something economists are pointing out. So, everyone's been talking about the uncertainty in the run-up to the budget, how businesses stopped investing, maybe they paused their recruitment plans because they thought, there might be more employment taxes in the budget to come. Can we actually afford to take these people on? Now some of that uncertainty's been removed. Labour, people like Stephen Kinnock, will be hoping that employment starts picking up again. And there have been some signs, actually, some kind of more up-to-date indicators, recruitment data suggests that in some pockets of the economy, hiring has kind of re-emerged again. So we're going to have to wait and see to see whether that big budget uncertainty, how big a block it really was on hiring. But as I pointed out, there are clearly some structural issues going on, some more longer-dated issues that preceded even the Chancellor's first budget that we have to keep in mind.
Gabriel, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Now, Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion. It's a defamation lawsuit filed overnight, and it accuses the BBC of putting terrible words in my mouth.
It's all over a Panorama documentary that edited one of his speeches to make it seem like he'd encouraged the Capitol Hill riot in 2021. Well, Oliver's here to break it down for us. We were waiting to see if he'd come through with this. He has, and $10 billion.
Yeah, and it's jumped up from the $1 billion that he threatened originally, then $5 billion for the defamation, then another $5 billion for the separate... it's a little bit obscure. It's a Florida law known as the Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act, basically saying that the BBC had acted not only dishonestly, not only deceptively, but also maliciously, and they intended to do it, and it's hurt what he's labelling as brand Trump.
Now, Oliver, you've been pouring through the whole of this lawsuit, the whole of the file this morning, and with your eagle eye, you spotted a bit of an eye-catching quote in it, right? About
Yes.
A former Prime Minister?
A former Prime Minister. So Donald Trump says that the BBC is so inherently biased against him, and then he invokes Liz Truss and her words, and he says, no less an authority than the United Kingdom's former Prime Minister Liz Truss discussed this bias, the need to hold the BBC accountable and the BBC's pattern of actual malice. He then goes on to say, remarked Truss, the BBC is a huge problem. They've lied, they've cheated, they've fiddled with footage, especially in the case of President Trump. Now, not every UK politician is taking that same stance. We've heard this morning from Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, saying that this is an outrageous lawsuit and that Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer needs to stand up and defend the BBC. And we also heard from Stephen Kinnock earlier on, basically saying that the BBC needs to stand up for itself.
It's absolutely right that the BBC is an independent organisation. I think they have apologised for one or two of the mistakes that were made in that Panorama programme, but they've also been very clear that there is no case to answer in terms of Mr. Trump's accusations on the broader point about libel or defamation. So, you know, I think it's right that the BBC stands firm on that point. You know, yes, there were some mistakes made in that particular piece of film, but I think the broader argument that they were making, they're right to stick by their guns on that, and I hope that they will continue to do so as an independent organisation, of course funded by the licence fee.
Have we had an official response yet from the BBC?
So we had a holding statement last night basically saying that they've had no further contact from the US President's legal team. Their position remains unchanged. Now, Samir Shah, the chairman of the BBC, had previously said the BBC does not have a case to answer. It has apologised for that edit of splicing together two separate clips from the 55-minute gap where there was, but the BBC so far hasn't given us a substantive response to this claim that's been made by Donald Trump.
Oliver, as always, thanks so much. Now, we've had some more information on the death of the film director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, who was stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home. Their son's been arrested on suspicion of murdering his parents.
So, of course, Rob Reiner, known for directing films from Stand By Me to When Harry Met Sally. Donald Trump, though, has also been heavily criticised for an extraordinary attack on Rob Reiner. He described him as tortured and struggling with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner's report does contain flash photography.
Rob and Michelle Reiner's home is dressed for Christmas. Wreaths on the gate and giant baubles on the tree. No hint of the horror that unfolded inside here. Reiner, one of Hollywood's most acclaimed film directors, and photographer wife Michelle found stabbed to death. The man arrested for murder is their son Nick, pictured here between the couple. And in the back of this family photo, aged 32, he'd struggled with drug addiction and mental health issues.
I have a famous dad and a famous grandpa, and they sort of, that fame sort of informs who you are. So I wanted to etch out my own identity with a more rebellious, angry, drug-addicted sort of persona.
The night before the couple's death, Nick had attended a Christmas party with them, thrown by talk show host Conan O'Brien. Other guests said Nick's behaviour was erratic and worrying.
We have our robbery homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder.
What are you doing?
Reiner acted in sitcoms and films, but was best known as a director.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The vision behind iconic hits like A Few Good Men
Just have an early meeting.
and When Harry Met Sally. Reiner was a Democratic Party activist and vocal critic of President Donald Trump. In response to Reiner's death, Trump posted this on social media. He said Reiner had died because of the anger he caused others and that he had a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS, adding that Reiner had a raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump.
Even in the current administration, where normal codes of conduct and standards of decency that you'd expect from a president no longer apply, there is disgust here that the nightmare that unfolded in this House could be exploited to make political statements.
Leave it to our president. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. I'm not surprised. It's disgusting, though.
Donald Trump is not a human being. He doesn't have any blood in his vein.
Republicans are also condemning Trump's statement. Former ally Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that this is a family tragedy, not politics, and should be met with empathy. The Reiner's murder has been described as a Greek tragedy. A man who brought such joy with his art, whose movies will live on. His own life ended in the cruelest way imaginable. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Coming up, we are going to be talking about those unemployment figures with the Chair Chancellor, Samel Stride. Interested to get his take, actually, on whether AI is to blame for why the situation is so bad, in particular for young people.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Right, we have been talking about the unemployment figures out today, showing an uptick in the unemployment rate in this country. Let's talk now to the Conservatives, shall we? The Shadow Chancellor, Sir Mel Stride, is here. So unemployment is up a bit. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm not surprised, but it's distressing, really. And this is the highest level of unemployment we've had for 5 years now. You'd have to go back to the pandemic to have a rate here. But I'm not surprised because what the government's decided to do is tax jobs. So they put up national insurance on jobs, talk down the economy, which extinguished the animal spirits. We had all that chaos in the build-up to the recent budget, which didn't help either, and borrowed and spent a lot of money, which has kept inflation higher and interest rates higher. And if you do those kind of things, you damage growth and you damage employment. Can I talk to you a bit about AI? Because it feels to me like we're doing a lot of the kind of routine political debate, right, about government policies and the impact they've had. Legitimate, don't get me wrong. But it does feel to me with the jobs market, we have got this huge, colossal thing coming down the track, like a kind of new industrial revolution, AI, and we are not talking about it enough. Are you worried that some of this reduction in the number of jobs available, particularly among young people, is because of AI? I think AI is and will continue to have an impact. I don't think that can be denied. And you've seen a big shrinkage to the number of graduate vacancies in the economy, for example. But look, we've seen these upheavals before, everything from the spinning jenny in the 18th century through the Industrial Revolution, laptop computers, internal combustion engine. These things have transformative effects on the economy. What matters is how quickly economies adjust within the labour market. And one of the things the government's doing is this employment rights bill, which is going to make it riskier to take people on, particularly younger people. And that's part of the story, I think, as to why we're going to see continuing these, sadly, increases in unemployment amongst younger people in particular. The final thing I'd say on that, Sophie, is that when it comes to national insurance increases, it wasn't just the rate that went up, but the threshold at which it kicks in was just about halved. And that disproportionately affected people on lower incomes and their recruitment prospects, and that means younger people again. So the wrong choice is being taken, particularly hitting younger people. Just on AI, because you acknowledge that it's going to have this transformative impact on the jobs market. What kind of jobs do you think are going to be made, kind of redundant from AI, or what kind of jobs are we going to still need? I mean, what advice would you give your own kids right now, basically, if you're trying to work out what job to go into? Probably the advice would be to go and become an electrician or a plasterer or a bricklayer, because it's unlikely that AI is going to impact that sector. But if you are in areas of professional services, accountancy, legal firms, consultancies, those kind of areas. And that is where the evidence is showing in real time that the cutbacks in graduate recruitment is most impacting. So that's probably it's basically the opposite of what we were told when we were at school, basically. Well, this is the slightly worrying thing. It's a different way of thinking. Yeah, the worrying thing is I think there will be people that started a degree 3 years ago, maybe coding would be one example, where you would have thought that 3 years later they'd be coming into a buoyant labour market with good earnings going forward, where whole swathes of those skills are being just taken out by AI altogether. But that's all the more reason why the government needs to get the tax right to drive employment and get the skills offer right to be able to adjust to that rapidly changing, volatile labour market. Donald Trump suing the BBC for $10 billion. I mean, does he need to withdraw that claim? What's your view? Well, that's down to him to decide whether he wants to do that or not. And $10 billion is an absurdly large amount of money, and I'd be very surprised if any settlement or otherwise the BBC is disputing this claim vigorously. Is it morally right to do it, though? I mean, it's taxpayers, isn't it? He'll end up... Well, that's down to him. And what we can't get away from, unfortunately, is the fact that in that Panorama programme, a week before the presidential election, the BBC chose to take two sections of what Donald Trump had said, about an hour apart, splice them together and present that in a way that was clearly misleading. They have apologised, they've lost their Director General, yes, that is all true. That is all true. But it is, his prerogative as to whether he decides to take further action. But let's see where that leads. The BBC has serious questions to answer here, I think. Liz Truss is referred to in the claim. I don't know if you've seen this. The claim says, no less an authority than the United Kingdom's former Prime Minister Liz Truss discussed this bias, the need to hold the BBC accountable and the BBC's pattern of actual malice. Do you think we can call Liz Truss no less an authority? She was the shortest-serving Prime Minister. Well, I'm not going to drawn into how to categorise Liz Truss.
What kind of authority do you think Liz Truss is?
Well, clearly what's happening here is that within this legal case, the Trump legal team have decided,
Liz Truss,
to their advantage to pray in aid comments made by a former Prime Minister, and they're entitled to do that. And if it gets to court, then I suppose, the court will take a view on it.
What kind of authority is Liz Truss?
Well, Liz Truss is a former Prime Minister.
That's a fact,
and
yes.
she's been, well, therein is your answer, really. But at the end of the day, it will be for a court, if it gets that far, to determine whether that's material or not.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Samantha Stride, speaking to us there. Coming up, we are going to be talking about the latest in Australia. The nation, of course, reeling from the tragic attack that we saw on Bondi Beach. Now, we want to return to the news from Australia right now, the appalling attack that we saw on Bondi Beach. And as the investigation is continuing, we're having more information that's coming through, more footage coming through about some of those heroes at Bondi who ran towards danger in a bid to save others. And I have to say, in this case, they paid the ultimate price for that.
So this couple, identified by local media as Boris and Sophia Gurman, are thought to be the first to try and stop the terrorists as they got out of a car that displayed an Islamic State flag. The footage you're watching now shows a man in a lavender shirt confronting one of the shooters before he was ultimately shot. Later on, there is some imagery of the couple lying next to the vehicle. As Sophie said, it's not the first example of the unbelievable heroism that was shown on the day, but it is expected now to be the first example of that heroism.
I mean, that is, I have to say, and I know how difficult it is watching, you know, those images, knowing the kind of tragedy that comes. But I think important perhaps to show the heroism, the bravery that was shown by people in that moment. A man confronting one of the shooters before ultimately being shot.
We're going to continue, of course, to bring all the updates following that tragic incident at Bondi Beach on Sunday throughout the show. Jonathan will be back at the top of the hour as well with more directly from Sydney. But now we're going to pivot and talk a little bit more, thankfully, about light-hearted topics. And we're joined by a special guest this morning, not long back from starring in The Traitors. Comedian Lucy Beaumont is with us. Lucy, you're bringing something a little different to the conversation as well today. We're talking initially about Christmas Pud.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know it's very... I just want to say, I just want to reflect and acknowledge the fact how hard it is. You know, we've just spoken about you know, this, you know, appalling tragedy, and we'll just put you right in it, and now you come in to talk about something else. It is, I guess, the perils of, you know, live broadcasting and live television.
I know. Well, I suppose in reality, you're watching the news and then families are preparing for Christmas, aren't they, as well? So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think this is it. You know, Christmas is, you know, such a... You know, we've seen it with Hanukkah as well, with the Jewish kind of celebration as well. It's such an important time of the year for so many people of all different faiths, including Christians as well. But I guess a part of it as well is bringing families together, celebrating together, and eating together as well, right?
Yes, yeah.
And part of that is Christmas pudding, which I think both of us have got slightly different views on, Wilf.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, Wilf likes it. You a fan? How's your Christmas pudding?
I love Christmas pudding. Yeah, that's because this is with Co-op that I've teamed with, because they've got a campaign to save the Christmas pudding that I thought I'd really like to get behind, because it's going out of fashion.
Right.
Yeah, no one's eating it anymore, and it's been around since medieval times. And there's only like 1 in 4 families that actually buy it, or they buy it but they don't actually eat it. And then the tradition's gone now, hasn't it, of like putting money in it.
And so talk us through about, are people replacing it with, are there different puddings people now have on Christmas Day instead, or is it?
I think so, yeah. I think they're replacing it. And then the millennials, they're not. The Gen Z, it's the Gen Z, they're not even trying it.
I think it's disgusting, sorry.
Do you really?
Yeah.
There's something slightly damning in that people don't eat it all year round, which is a kind of telling sign that it's not your favourite pudding, but I definitely love it at this time of year.
Yeah, I love it.
But you don't have it in the summer, which is kind of telling.
No, but then you don't want anything that heavy, do you? But I've been conditioned to like it, I think. I was made to eat it.
Yeah, me too.
Is that why you don't like it?
I continue or
agree.
Kind of peer pressure to eat it as well, and I'm just going, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But have you had it, like, in different ways? Have you had it, like...
Yeah, I've tried, you know, the brandied butter and the custard, but, I mean, I just...
Really, it is a vehicle for brandy butter.
I mean, I would just go for the chocolate log and just make a case for the chocolate log actually being the far superior Christmas
I'm not against
dessert.
Multiple options.
So will you not have it at all? Would you have it... Would you be
Yeah, no, we definitely have Christmas pudding, but I mean, increasingly, it's really only my mum and I that have it. Everyone else leaves it. And, but, you know, by that point in the meal, you're kind of full.
Yeah.
It's a vehicle for brandy.
Do you make your own Christmas pudding, Lucy?
I've never done it. And I said, I'll start doing it, but apparently you've got to make it like 5 years in advance.
Yeah. That's another it's another problem with it, though, isn't it?
It's a ridiculous dessert.
It's quite hard to make. I've never made one. No idea.
It's a lot of hours of something that tastes that bad. That's what I would say. It's really what I'd say.
Tell us about the sort of aftermath of Traitors and how much, I guess, interest it sparked. It was quite extraordinary, this series.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thought it would be as popular as it was. I'm now really known with 7-year-olds. I get them coming up to me asking for my art. I feel like Hannah Montana. I can't believe children know who I am, because it was something that people watch with all the family.
I was a big fan of the programme, I should say. And one of the bits that really stood out to me is that, I mean, the whole point of Traitors, right, if you haven't watched it, if you're one of the few people who haven't watched it, it's kind of about betrayal and betraying your friends and people that you become close to. And that moment when you realised that someone that you were very close to on the programme was a traitor and was murdering you.
I know, I couldn't believe
it. Felt quite... I mean, I'm talking about Kat on the programme. It felt quite sort of visceral, actually.
Yeah, well, there was just no clue. It was such a shock. I mean, because I got to see them face to face, you know, it was quite an epic, sort of on a chessboard.
On the chessboard, very dramatic, yeah.
And then, like, when it went out, my mum just texted me and was like, whose coat was that? It was too big for you. That's all I can remember. I was like,
did you feel betrayed by her personally?
I did. Well, I mean, you forget it's a game.
And are you friends now? Have you made up? Or?
Oh, yeah. Like, everyone's... It is a game. Like, everyone would have to do it. But there was just no clue. You know, it's so hard, because people say, how could you not know? You didn't. But, yeah, it is. It stops being a game and you take things personal, yeah.
Lucy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
Great to
you.
see you this morning, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, you too.
Now, Elon Musk's success in space has been achieved with extraordinary speed. His company Starlink has sent more satellites into orbit than everyone else combined. But our data and forensic team has found 21% of Starlink activity occurs in unlicensed countries.
Well, that includes Sudan, where the militant rapid support forces used the network in the civil war. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has been digging into this. Here's a taste of his report.
It is a sleek, glossy vision. High-speed internet, more luxury than utility. Starlink, which is owned by SpaceX, uses receivers like this to deliver internet anywhere, no matter how remote. And it's enabled the world's richest man to dominate space too. But anyone being able to get internet anywhere means exactly that. Anyone, including people in places who you might prefer not have access at all. This is Sudan. Members of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, who have been accused of massacring civilians and other war crimes, have fitted Starlink terminals to their vehicles. An analysis by Sky's Data and Forensics Unit shows that 21% of global Starlink traffic originates from unauthorized locations like Sudan.
The fact that you're seeing increasingly RSF fighters advertise it on platforms like Facebook, platforms like TikTok, that's meant to essentially be part of the narrative warfare, displaying or showing off that they have more advanced electronic capabilities.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
There is a global race to control space.
SpaceX, go Starlink.
That involves nation-states and superpowers. But one man is winning, Elon Musk through his company SpaceX. It's these rockets that he uses to deliver Starlinks into low Earth orbit, LEO, an orbit relatively close to Earth used by most satellites. Starlink has come to dominate LEO since it launched its first 60 satellites, here in green, in May 2019. 2 years later, that was up to 1,663 satellites, more than had been launched in the entire Cold War by the US and Soviet Union combined. By December 2025, the majority of all satellites in space were part of Starlink. This is the Sky News engineering department, where we work with a lot of technologies, and that's what Starlink fundamentally is, a neutral piece of technology, a useful one, because rather than a big satellite dish like this on the back of a truck, these are being phased out, you get a Starlink terminal on the front. And if that's not portable enough, well, you can grab one of these, shove it in a backpack and have internet anywhere you go. Now, Starlink knows the location of all these terminals and it can turn them on and off. But they're so portable, the technology is so fast moving that norms, laws, regulations are perhaps not keeping pace.
Starlink is an exemplar of a growing tension point and problem of governance on a global scale. So technological reality and changes within technologies are rapidly increasing. Rule of law, however, is inching along at a snail's pace. And what this leads to then is an ever-widening gulf between technological realities and rule of law.
This shows all the countries where Starlink officially operates. Sudan is not on that list. But even if bad actors do get their hands on Starlink, it has provided lifelines to many, many others, especially in disaster zones. Alison Thompson is an aid worker who spent weeks in Jamaica after the devastating Hurricane Melissa ripped through the island. She says it has revolutionised aid.
We get down 15 minutes, find the police station, the school, the clinic. If that's wiped out, someone responsible. We have someone that sets the Starlink and can be responsible for that. And then we quickly assess the area. What's the population? What are the needs? Then we jump back up in the helicopter. Next village, next village. We try to hit at least 20 villages a day. That opens up that whole community to all the aid that they need.
Starlink didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, but they have previously said, on the rare occasions we identify a violation, we take appropriate action, including working with law enforcement agencies around the world. Its vast constellation represents tremendous power in space, for good and potentially for bad.
Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, founder of SpaceX, founder of XAI.
And all that power rests with one man, and the decisions that he can make alone. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
Lots more to come. After the break, we're going to be talking about some Young Playwright Awards and the importance of getting young people into the trade.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News. Is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Next, we're going to hear about an exciting opportunity for budding young playwrights.
So the Royal Court Theatre is inviting every teenager across the country to submit their ideas to a national competition.
The winning play gets the chance to be professionally performed at the theatre. Quite a great offering. We're joined now by the artistic director at the Royal Court Theatre, David Byrne, and Royal Court Young Playwright Award winner from this year, Leo Simpe-Asante. Very good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. Congrats, by the way, on being the winner. Now they're sort of poster child for other people to enter. And David, firstly, just to you, so just when did this start, and tell us why this whole awards process was set up?
So as me and my executive director, Will Young, whose brainchild the Young Playwrights Award was, started the Royal Court, we were astonished when our associate playwright, Beth Flintoff, told us that there is an opportunity in the country if you're writing in almost any other medium. If you're writing poetry, if you're writing a short story, that at school, or there'll be national competitions to sort of encourage young people into writing in that form. But there is currently nothing in the country, including on the curriculum, for dramatic writing or playwriting. And we thought, being the Royal Court, being the Writers' Theatre, it felt only right that we put something in place to encourage the nation's young people to write and send us plays.
And it's quite a risk, because you have to put on these plays. So, I mean, like, you know, you could be in a situation where if you hadn't had many submissions or if they weren't up to scratch, then, you know, you'd be stuck, I guess.
I think it started as a bit of a risk, but as soon as the plays started arriving, we were like, these are some of the best plays we've received. I remember when Leo's play arrived in our inbox, and as the office read it, there was such a frisson that went around the entire building and people were passing it between each other. It's been one of the best engines we've had for finding new writers and new work.
And so, Leo, you won this year.
Yes.
And tell us a bit about the play you wrote. And I mean, the idea of writing anything, to me, is incomprehensible. But a screenplay, I mean, how long did it take you? And I guess the feeling when you won?
Yeah, so the play I wrote is called Godot's To-Do List, and it's a spoof on Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. I started writing it in November, so 6 months before the play award was all like announced and sorted out. And yeah, I had the idea for it in like a drama school text analysis class, because we were doing Waiting for Godot. And I sort of thought, there's something else to this story here. And yeah, no, I submitted it in May and then found out that I won in June. And then it was put on by the Royal Court at their Young Playwrights Award Festival in July. And it's been a whirlwind, honestly. It felt so good to, you know, have my work seen and enjoyed by other people.
And this is something you're clearly very passionate about. And I think you told us you're studying it as well, more broadly. Do you think you're in the minority of young people caring passionately about writing plays and theatre more broadly, or not?
I think it's definitely a bit of a niche subject in terms of if you're not really into theatre, then it's not really your world. But I think a lot of young people do have that spark inside of just wanting to create, even if it's for them, if it's for other people. You know, like kids playing in playgrounds and stuff like that. There's always that thing. And that's where my spark is sort of channeled into playwriting. But I think there are a lot of different venues for young people to get into their creativity, and I've just found the one that works for me.
Can I talk to you a little bit about access to, you know, theatre, to playwriting, all that kind of stuff as well? Because there has been some criticism, and I'm thinking particularly in kind of films, that actually we're going kind of backwards in terms of social mobility when it comes to actually the proportion of famous actors who went to private school, all this kind of thing. And I always imagine that the theatre world is a bit, you know, who you know rather than how good you are. I mean, how important do you think things like this are in opening up to anybody to enter?
I think really essential. I mean, theatre has always been completely reinvented by young generations. Every generation comes through, sort of completely reinvents it and sort of shows a new way forward. So for us, it's really essential that that lifeblood is coming through. And I think that's why this competition felt like the right thing to do. It's a really generous, big, open offer. The fact that any young person in the country can send us something and it will be read and taken seriously, and you don't need any money, you don't need to be participating in a sort of wider course, and that it can open up sort of wider opportunities. I mean, Leo's play is actually going to be part of our 70th anniversary season. It's in a double bill with Gary Oldman in Crapp's Last Tape. And I think it's
not bad. That's not bad company.
For a Royal Court debut, I think that's pretty astonishing. But what we're hoping is that it shows that there is an open door and open access to our stages, that if you send us a play and it really excites us, the sort of sky's the limit of what we can do at the Royal Court.
Leo, what's your take in terms of whether access is wide enough, whether you won the award, fantastic, but a lot of people won't, and what kind of needs to be done to broaden that opportunity?
I think the most important thing that the award does is just bring people into that space of knowing that they can write a play, and even learning, you know, like the format, or getting into playwriting or reading a play and thinking, oh, actually, that's really interesting, I might be able to get into that. I don't think necessarily the goal of the award is to have like these winners that go on and put on the plays. It's just get young people into playwriting and burst their creativity.
Favourite play?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go classic. I'm going to say Much Ado About Shakespeare.
Oh, lovely.
It got me back into Shakespeare when
Brilliant.
I was doing it in GCSEs.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great mix of comedy and tragedy and everything. And I love witty stuff, like clever stuff. So Beatrice and Benedict are like my favourite.
Do you think AI could ever create something as clever and brilliant as that?
No. Solely because, well, not solely because, but mainly because the whole joy that I find in playwriting is innovation. And like taking something as it is and adapting it into something else, which is what I did with Godot's to-do list. It's a take on Waiting for Godot that then shifts into something else. And I think that in of itself is inherently human, in that you sort of need... It's a creativity that you can't get, because AI is obviously just regurgitating other things found on the internet. It can't make the same connections that the human brain can in regards to innovating something completely new and completely changing the format of what it is. It can do it within the parameters. If you ask it to write a play, it can write a play, but it can't change what playwriting is. And that's what playwriting is. It's always innovating and changing.
I am very confident that AI can't replace Leo. I'm not so sure about myself, but great to have you with us. Congrats again on the award. And David, good luck with next year's version of the award. I hope you get lots of submissions.
Thank you very much.
Such a great thing.
Such a great thing. David and Leo, awesome discussion there. Lots more still to come in the day ahead, of course. After the break, we'll be back out in Sydney with Jonathan and the team, continuing to sum up all of the latest headlines and the fallout from Sunday's tragic events on Bondi Beach.
Yeah, we have had a few updates just to leave you with. One of the suspects has woken up from the coma in hospital. They are currently investigating this trip to the Philippines that the two gunmen took shortly before the shootings, and also the fact that these Islamic State flags were found on the vehicle as well. Many more updates to come. We're going to be taking you right back to Sydney after this short break.